Chapter 868. The Battle of the Kylan was coming to an end. Heavy rain fell from the sky and fogged up the night sky. Above the void, the heavenly book shone brilliantly. 6 scrolls appeared at the same time. It was a scene that had never been seen before. The sky opened and the earth appeared. The scene of the beginning of the world was extremely shocking. In the chaos, an aurora cut across the sky. It was the end of creation and destruction. God descended to the mortal world and looked down on the world. The stars circled around and transcended everything. Celestial God Dance, the first move of the divine scroll. It was developed again in the scene of creation. Its power was boundless and the power of destruction fell from the sky. Borrowing the power of God, Ningchen moved his hands in the void. In the snow, the stars fell. It was terrifying and destructive. Star-picking hand's final move, reverse formless. The crisis was approaching. The Kylan patriarch used his ultimate skill. Majestic airflow surged and formed a storm. In the storm, a giant hand held up the sky and grabbed the stars falling from the sky. Celestial Demon's 6 unique skills. Star transformation. Under heaven's tear, the demon body used the ultimate move. 9 big stars appeared between his hands. They changed endlessly and thousands of stars fell from the sky. 9 suns burning the sky. The phoenix body also catalyzed the appearance of the 9 suns. Divine flame raged and the sun fell from the sky. The 3 bodies worked together. The stars gathered into the 9 suns and the demon flame burned the mortal world. The shocking power lit up the night sky and crashed into the star-picking hand. 4 realms of transcendence and 6 scrolls of world shaking. In the most terrifying collision, the raging waves spread rapidly. Heaven and earth collapsed. The indescribable aftershock spread continuously and destroyed the mountains. The scene of the end of the world shook. The palaces collapsed and sank into the ground. They became history. Ancient inheritances and immortal sects, along with the aftershocks of their moves, fell into oblivion, forever disappearing from this world. In the boundless fire, the 3 bodies were dyed red and flew out. After 100 steps, they stopped. Below, the Kylan patriarch took half a step back. The aura around him shook violently. Sword style, remnant red. Seeing that the Kylan patriarch's aura was unstable, the phoenix body stepped forward. Her body was like a thunderbolt. The fairy-slaying sword was sharp and pierced toward the Kylan patriarch's heart again. The Kylan patriarch's face darkened. He gathered the energy in his palm and blocked in front of his body. The sword was like a remnant rainbow. It was extremely fast and sharp, piercing straight into the wind and clouds. Wind and clouds protected her body, making it difficult for the sword momentum to penetrate her. Behind her, demonic aura surged, and a demonic shadow swept over. The force of his palm penetrated into the phoenix's body, boosting the momentum of his attack. With the 2 of them working together, the immortal execution broke through the wind and clouds, advancing a few more centimeters. All of you are too weak. The Kylan patriarch sneered as he gathered the essence in his palm. The waves surged and the wind howled. Your Excellency's cultivation is admirable. However, since I've come here, how could I be unprepared? At the back of the battlefield, Ningchen took a step forward. His white hair danced in the air as he unleashed all of his techniques. Instantly, the wind and snow in the sky surged wildly. Time flowed between heaven and earth as the might of the divine prohibition was fully unleashed. The red light in the forbidden area filled the sky. At the same time, the red light in the Kylan patriarch's chest shone brightly. The power of time that the immortal slayer had penetrated exploded and spread rapidly. The 4 realms were proud of the world, and the natural laws did not touch the body. However, the divine restriction power that entered the body was unstoppable. Once it erupted, there was a crazy backlash. In a moment of carelessness, the Kylan patriarch staggered and the vital core that he had gathered dissipated immediately. Time consumed his body and the wind and clouds in front of him shook. It could no longer stop the divine sword. The phoenix's body stepped forward and the immortal slayer in her hand penetrated the Kylan patriarch's chest. Ah! The Kylan patriarch groaned and took a few steps back. Blood flowed from his chest and dyed his clothes red. No wonder you were willing to injure me at all costs. He. A pool of blood splashed and dyed the sky red. The Chilean patriarch looked up to the sky and laughed crazily. Then he shouted angrily and turned his palm to counterattack. The phoenix's left arm crossed to block the angry palm. With a violent tremor, the phoenix's body flew a few hundred feet away. In the scattered starlight, the left arm fell powerlessly and the martial bones were all broken. Sacred blood battle suit. Seeing the starlight scattered around the phoenix's body, the Chilean patriarch's eyes darkened. No, it was not a complete battle suit. There was only an arm guard, and it was already broken. A few hundred feet away, the phoenix's body vomited a mouthful of red blood and staggered. With the help of the arm guard, she barely blocked the fatal palm. On her shoulder, the small gourd shone brightly and did its best to heal her injuries. The cold night was bleak, and the battle had reached the final stage. In the void, the Chilean patriarch suppressed his injuries. His heart meridians were all broken, but he still did not fall. His heart meridians were destroyed, but he didn't die. The fourth realm is really hard to understand. After a short pause, the three figures stepped forward and stood in the void. They looked at the old man in front of them and said coldly, "There are still many things you can't imagine. The ninth son of the Mahis sect, I will make sure you die a horrible death today." The Chilean patriarch's face flashed ferociously. His vital essence kept flowing in his heart and mouth to protect his body that was severely injured by immortal slayer. "That depends on whether you have the ability or not." Ningchen replied coldly. The three figures moved again. His sword was like a startled swan that broke the polar night. The violent sword and cold eyes were dazzling in the night. The Chilean patriarch raised his hand to block the attack. However, with the suppression of resentment and the erosion of time, his broken body was extremely weak. The three figures fought against the four realms. The sword light crisscrossed, leaving no gap and no chance of survival. Star-picking hand. The situation was reversed. The Chilean patriarch's face darkened. He raised his hand to gather vital essence and shook the stars. Not allowing the battle to change again, Lin Yuzhen stepped into the battle from the outside. The soaring serpent's phantom roared to the sky and gathered all her power. The phoenix's cry shone as it resisted the star-picking hand. Ah! With a groan, blood was stained. The star-picking hand was unshakable. The soaring serpent dispersed and Prince Chi's body flew out. "Your Highness!" Ningchen was shocked. However, there was no time to lose. Taisher's sword turned and the snow wave soared to the sky. 3,000 miles of sword snow. The sword shone and the sword's snow danced. It was a flash of white light. The white hair was dazzling and the sword light was extremely bright. The Chilean patriarch raised his palm again to block the sword light. However, his vital essence was not condensed enough and his move was weaker. With a boom, the sword snow broke through the sky. The aftermath roared and the two figures retreated at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix figure appeared again. With absolute speed and sword power, the immortal slayer pierced the sky and penetrated the old man's chest again. Impudent! The sword tip entered the body and the pain consumed him. The Chilean patriarch turned his palm and struck out. Wind and thunder surged. Samsara calamity! At the critical moment, the demon body rushed over. Samsara appeared on his sword and blocked the power of wind and thunder. In the violent collision, the two figures flew out several feet. Although they were in a sorry state, they retained their combat power. In the tragic battle, there were many schemes and multiple suppressions. However, the power of a fourth realm cultivator was still terrifying. For the first time, the power of the divine prohibition of time did not achieve the expected effect. Drops of blood fell from the sky. At this point in the battle, both sides were dyed red. There should have been no suspense in the battle, but at this moment, the outcome was unpredictable. "You guys seal his movements. Give me a breath's time." On the left side of the three figures, the phoenix body said in a low voice. "Okay." Ning Chen and the demon body responded and rushed out to trap the enemy together. Outside the battle, The phoenix body held his sword horizontally. His sword will rose to the extreme. In the next moment, the sword aura between heaven and earth rapidly gathered without beginning or end. 6 paths fall together, myriad demonic calamities, Taishang forbidden sword. As soon as he stepped out, thousands of swords soared into the sky. His red robe soared into the sky. The immortal slayer spun and the sword flow surged, shining brilliantly. Doomsday catastrophe! With a light shout, thousands of swords broke through the sky. The shocking scene drowned the battle in an instant. The sword flow surged endlessly. The Kylan patriarch's pupils shrank. He turned his palm and held up the sky, blocking the thousands of swords. After a moment, rumbling sounds were heard. The forbidden sword shook the world. The fourth realm was even more immeasurable. The thousands of swords were shattered. Suddenly, blood spurted out and dyed the night sky red. At the end of the thousands of swords, the immortal slayer appeared. It cut off an arm and took the initiative. 4 scrolls at the same time, lifeless heaven and earth. The opportunity reappeared. Ning Chen's figure rushed forward. His 2 swords circled around. There was a loud rumble. The snow waves were vast and mighty. In a short time, the killing palm was majestic. It destroyed the sky and split the peak. They fought with their foundation and their lives. The 4 scrolls rotated endlessly and dissipated the invisible force. In a short time, they were able to support the knowing destiny state and did not retreat half a step. There was a loud rumble. Fists and palms landed on the body. Blood splattered and dyed the snow-white snow red. It was the most direct confrontation. Life and death were at stake. Neither of them showed mercy. They did not gather chi and fought with force. In a few moves, heavy punches landed on the body. The power of the 9 heavens star-picking hand is invincible. Ignoring the injury, the Kylan patriarch threw out a heavy punch. The Kylan patriarch looked crazy. His chi pierced the sky and his killing intent exceeded the limit. Ning Chen moved again and avoided the heavy punch. He threw a punch and landed on the patriarch's chest. The punch penetrated the body and blood splattered. The Kylan patriarch did not retreat. He raised his hand to grab Ning Chen's arm. Thunder surged and wanted to break his arm. You only have 1 arm left. 1 for 1. It's worth it. Ning Chen snorted. He did not dodge. His heavy punch condensed chi and hit the patriarch's left shoulder. There was a loud rumble. The 2 figures retreated at the same time. Their arms hung down and their clothes were stained with blood. Star Spirit! Ning Chen shouted. The sword light flew back. The moment he held it, Ning Chen's figure flashed again. He only had 1 hand and 1 sword. His killing intent did not decrease. The Kylan patriarch's figure retreated. However, both his arms were broken. The situation was dangerous. Star-picking hand, scorching sun. Taking a step forward, the Chilan patriarch condensed his origin energy into a palm. Wind and clouds gathered and blasted towards the person in front of him. Ning Chen brandished his sword. With a loud bang, he was sent flying several feet away. His astral soul left his hand and fell to the ground. Popo's blood stained his arm. 2 figures appeared from the side and looked at the old man in front of them. In an instant, they dashed out again. The pinnacle of speed and the supreme of strength. Together with the Phoenix demon, their swords were merciless and deadly. The situation was critical. The Kylan patriarch's expression turned gloomy. His figure flashed, and the wind and thunder surged. Outside the battlefield, Ning Chen stood quietly. His left hand clenched into a fist, and the trapping immortal slowly flew up from the ground. Earth chi lingered around it, and a terrifying aura of time circulated. Among the 4 great immortal swords, the one with the least killing intent was also the one with the most blood. Exterminating immortal sharp, slaughtering immortal death, trapping immortal red light everywhere, exterminating immortal infinite transformations, staining immortal robes with the blood of divine immortals of the grand firmament, for different swords with different effects. In ancient times, their might had shaken the heavens, and now they had slain Xie Wang. Sword. 12. The 12th sword appeared once again. magnificent sword light coiled around the area. Under the night sky, the 7 colors of the sword flowed. Divine might shook the world. Learning the sword for 100 years, unrivaled in the world, the only knowing destiny Marquis in the world. Chapter 869. The final move of the Qilin battle was about to arrive. The 12th sword reappeared, and a magnificent sword light appeared. Suddenly, the sword pressure swept across the world, and the land in all directions disintegrated. No words could be spoken because words were already useless. The same sword move, but completely different sword intent. The sword was one, and different paths led to the same destination. The celestial trapping sword was in his hand, and the earth energy was activated. The entire Qilin pavilion shook, unable to withstand the sword that was about to be unleashed. In the battle, the Qilin ancestor's expression changed drastically. He shouted, and the wind and thunder around him exploded, blasting the two away. He immediately retreated, wanting to leave the battle. However, the sword intent had already appeared, and it was too late to retreat. The white-haired figure swept past, and in the blink of an eye, the celestial trapping sword broke through the void, and the sword light slashed open the polar night. "You!" He suddenly turned around, but his head was separated from his body. The Qilin ancestor's head flew high, and blood spurted into the sky, adding a red color to the cold night. In the sky, the Tai Chi formation rotated rapidly, and black and red light scattered, trapping the Qilin ancestor's body to prevent any changes from happening. Is it over? The Phoenix demon's figure swept over, and the demon body looked at the Qilin ancestor who was separated from his body. It's not clear yet, don't be careless. Ning Chen's eyes flashed, and he said. As soon as he finished speaking, blood flowed in reverse under the Tai Chi formation. After a moment, the Qilin ancestor's body suddenly exploded, and a terrifying impact roared out, instantly destroying the Yin and Yang Great Formation. Seeing this, the 3 figures quickly retreated, avoiding the aftermath of the impact. In front of them, in the billowing waves of dust, an illusory figure appeared. He had a middle-aged face, and his soul power was transformed into clothes. His strong aura was so oppressive that it was difficult to breathe. As expected, he won't die so easily. In the middle of the 3 figures, Ning Chen's eyes turned cold. Such a powerful soul power had even surpassed the 49 leaders of the Dao sects. The terror of the 4th realm was indeed well-deserved. Can you still fight? Ning Chen asked. Endless fighting spirit. The demon body took a step forward, and the demonic aura around him surged. Yes. The phoenix body also stepped forward and nodded. Since we promised Prince Qi to destroy the Qilin pavilion, we can't go back on our words. The situation is unclear now, be careful. Ning Chen looked at the illusory figure in front of him. Understood, the phoenix body said calmly. Dragging the battle out won't do us any good. I'll make the first move to test the waters. The demon body said coldly. His figure dashed out. The crimson drill sword was suffused with blood-red light, and a baleful aura flourished. With a swing of the sword, demonic waves surged. The capabilities of the 4th realm are beyond your imagination. The Qilin ancestor's eyes regained their coldness. He took a step forward and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the devil. He raised his hand and slammed it down on the devil's chest. The demonic qi scattered, and the demonic body was sent flying. 1,000 feet away, it barely managed to stabilize itself. It spat out a mouthful of blood that stained the demonic sword. Ning Chen was shocked. A moment later, he forced himself to calm down and observe the changes in the battle. There was no doubt that the Qilin Patriarch's speed was much faster than before. However, it seemed that he was not completely unaffected after losing his physical body. At the very least, if that palm strike had been unleashed earlier, the devil body most likely wouldn't have been able to stand up. Overall, the Qilin Patriarch had become weaker. He was no longer at his peak. Beside him, the Phoenix body also saw the change in the Qilin Patriarch. He took a step forward and moved out in a flash. The Qilin Patriarch moved at the same extreme speed. His palm surged and slammed toward the Phoenix body. The phoenix body turned back and avoided the palm strike. The sword radiance was dazzling and slashed down from the sky. With a violent tremor, the Qilin patriarch waved his hand to disperse the sword radiance. He turned his hand over and forcefully countered with a palm strike. The situation of the peak battle changed again. The battle of speed, the battle of reflexes, the surging sword radiance, and the surging palm strike constantly crossed between heaven and earth. Outside the battle, Ning Chen calmly watched the battle, waiting for an opportunity to appear. Not far away, the demonic body suppressed his heavy injuries and stepped forward, also waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Qi Lian's brilliance was not as bright as before. After a great battle, the three bodies were all damaged and were no longer at their peak. With the impact of the battle's aftermath, the divine restriction was almost destroyed. The power of the divine law was filled and constantly overflowed between heaven and earth. At this point in the battle, there was no longer any reservation. There was only a competition of absolute strength and no fear of death. In the battle, the Qilin patriarch's body was glowing. Although his physical body was destroyed and only his soul was left, every move of his had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Facing the phoenix body with the fairy-slaying sword in hand, he was able to suppress her. "Help me." After watching the battle for a while, Ning Chen whispered softly. Immediately, the vital essence around his body rose and the fairy-trapping sword rotated. Seeing this, the demonic body condensed vital essence and gathered qi. The demonic body surged and supported the former. Celestial technique, waxing moons. The two joined forces and the demonic moon appeared out of thin air, binding the Qilin patriarch's body. In an instant, the demonic moon collapsed and the Qilin patriarch's soul was also torn apart. Ugh! With a painful groan, the celestial technique's power destroyed the divine soul. The Qilin patriarch's figure staggered and showed a painful expression. Sky-shattering! In an instant, the phoenix body swept past and pierced the fairy-slaying moon toward the Qilin patriarch. Back off! With a furious roar, the Qilin patriarch's soul power erupted. The wind and clouds were ordered to disperse rapidly. With a loud bang, the phoenix body flew backward. After a dozen feet, it stabilized its body and turned back without caring about its injuries. The celestial might on the sword was dazzling. With the help of extreme speed, it crashed into the wind and clouds surrounding the Qilin patriarch's soul. After a moment of stalemate, the celestial sword couldn't move half a step forward. At this moment, outside the battlefield, the Xian sound vibrated and penetrated the wind and clouds. The king of hell played, judging life and death. The Xian sound roared and surged. The white tiger deity's weapon of slaughter appeared again. The Xian sound was not real, and the wind and clouds were difficult to block. The Xian sound passed through the Qilin patriarch's body and severely injured his soul. With a step back, the Qilin patriarch's soul shook. He had a splitting headache. Without the protection of his body, his weakness was exposed. Sword. The opportunity appeared again. The phoenix body swung the sword. Suddenly, with a groan, her body staggered. The injuries in her body broke out and attacked her body. Seeing this, the Qilin patriarch forcibly condensed his vital essence and pressed his palm on the phoenix body. Suddenly, blood splattered all over the sky. Ning Chen and the demonic body were shocked. They rushed forward and caught the phoenix body who was severely injured. Not good. Seeing the phoenix body's injuries, Ning Chen's eyes darkened. The phoenix body's injuries were not light, and she couldn't fight anymore. Without the phoenix body, they had lost the ability to control the situation and seize the opportunity. The following battle would be difficult. Raising his hand to swallow the phoenix body's power, Ning Chen's expression was grave. He didn't expect the phoenix body to lose its fighting power at the most crucial moment. It was like adding frost to snow. How should we fight? The demonic body looked forward and asked in a deep voice. Her soul is far weaker than her physical body. She can't resist the judgment of time. You hold her back for 10 breaths. I will repair the divine restriction, Ning Chen said calmly. 10 breaths? But the demonic body replied in a deep voice. With a clench of his left hand, The immortal slaying sword flew into his hand. In an instant, the demonic body flashed past and entered the battle alone. Waving both swords, demonic waves surged. You only have one body left to fight? What a pity! The Chilean patriarch sneered. He suppressed the chaotic soul power in his body. His right palm stirred up the wind and clouds, and he faced the two swords head-on. A sonorous sound reverberated through the night. Demonic energy surged and blood dripped. The valiant demonic body was covered in blood, which added to its madness. Every move was shocking. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Without the phoenix body's control and the main body's cooperation, the battle became unprecedentedly desperate. Every sword move caused blood to spray. Every breath of time caused heavy injuries to the demonic body. Outside the battle, Ning Chen's body was covered in snow. With blood as a guide and the seal as a lamp, he drew the power of time from the immortal sword to open the divine restriction again. With a bang, the demonic body blocked with both swords, but it was difficult to disperse the remaining power. The demonic body was sent flying several steps back. 10 breaths have already passed. Are you still not done? The demonic body coughed up a mouthful of blood and raised a hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. I'm done, Ning Chen said calmly. The immortal sword in his hand fell once more. The moment it entered the ground, a red light spread throughout the world. The yellow springs opened and time devoured souls. The divine restriction opened once more. Above the collapsed void, time flowed and rapidly devoured the vitality of the people within. Return, demonic body, Ning Chen said softly. Then he clenched his left hand. The fairy-slaying sword flew from the demonic body's hand and disappeared into his hand. 9th saber, God territory. The 9th saber reappeared and the sword territory spread. Endless sword light rose into the sky, crisscrossing and spreading to every corner of the sword territory. Not far away, the demonic body dissipated and returned to the main body. The demonic body's task was completed. They returned to their respective places for the final battle. In the sword territory, the white-haired figure stood tall. His body was like a sword, and his body was like a sword. His white clothes flashed past and he summoned back his essence. Every move returned to the beginning of the sword. The Chilean patriarch used the power of heaven and earth to block the attack. However, the fairy-slaying sword was unstoppable. The sword split the wind and clouds, and time fell on the demonic body. Time was merciless. Every time it fell on the demonic body, the Chilean patriarch's soul weakened a little. Sensing that time had come to an end, the Chilean patriarch looked at the Chilean pavilion below with nostalgia. He did not expect that he would not be able to protect it in the end. Unwilling to let his vitality be used up, the Chilean patriarch's eyes flashed. He took the attack head-on. The power of the wind and clouds was released and forcefully engulfed the person in front of him. Let's go to hell together. With a deep roar, the Chilean patriarch's soul power rushed to the 9 heavens. A moment later, his body exploded. At the critical moment of life and death, Ning Chen stepped back quickly. The void in front of him swirled and a broken green cauldron appeared to protect him. Boom! In the earth-shattering explosion, the green cauldron took most of the impact. However, there was still a little power that went through and infused into Ning Chen's body. A pool of blood splattered. His white hair was dyed red. His white clothes fell and crashed into the ground with the green cauldron. In the dust and sand flying in the sky, Ning Chen staggered to his feet. His eyes looked at the huge black hole with turbulence in the sky. A touch of shock flashed across his eyes. That was close. If he did not get this green cauldron in the East Celestial world, he was afraid that this time he would not be able to escape. Suddenly, Ning Chen's eyes darkened. He looked into the distance with a murderous look. Since you are here, show yourself. I haven't seen you for a long time. Your strength has increased a lot. However, how much can you do now? As he spoke, above the void, a beautiful figure descended from the sky. She held a red umbrella and blocked the moonlight in the sky. Chapter 870. The Chilean battle had come to an end. Suddenly, the wind changed and the moon weaver appeared, descending from the sky. The blood-red umbrella covered the cold moon. Under the moon, the fairy exuded a transcendent aura that made it difficult to distinguish between immortal and devil. The Moon Weaver! Ning Chen's eyes darkened. He didn't conceal his killing intent, and the baleful aura around his immortal sword was oppressive. The Moon Weaver descended, her gaze sweeping over the destroyed Qilin pavilion. She calmly said, "You were able to destroy an ancient inheritance by yourself. The 9th disciple of Mahist Gate, or perhaps I should call you the Jiming Marquis. Your speed of growth has truly exceeded my expectations." "So you couldn't help but attack?" asked Ning Chen coldly. The Moon Weaver stepped forward and said, "It's not strange for me to get rid of a potential problem while I'm at it." There was no fear on Ning Chen's face. "You can try. I hope the potential problem you speak of won't become a real problem." The Moon Weaver stopped and looked at the person in front of her. "If you were at your peak, killing you might have been difficult. But in your current situation, killing you is as easy as blowing off dust. Since you're so confident, the Devil Palace must have been waiting for this moment for a long time," said Ning Chen indifferently. "Your fate is different from ordinary people. If I want to kill you, as long as I find the right time, it won't be as difficult as I imagine," said the Moon Weaver softly. "Then is this the time you think it is? In that case, there's no need to say anything more. Come, let this Marquis see just how capable the Devil Palace's 3rd protector is." With that, Ning Chen took a step forward. With a bang, the ground beneath his feet cracked. Red light filled the sky as his peerless foundation drew in the wind and snow. He once again opened his sword domain. Across from him, the Moon Weaver's expression hardened. With a wave of her slender hand, an ancient divine sword appeared and landed in front of her. She looked at the person in front of her and said indifferently, "Just now, you experienced a great battle. What do you think your chances of victory are?" "It's enough to deal with you," said Ning Chen calmly. Neither side backed down, and the situation became more and more tense. A great battle was on the verge of breaking out. Just as the battle was about to begin, the Moon Weaver waved her hand and put away the inverted water moon. She said indifferently, "Marjiming, the Devil Palace has no intention of being your enemy. I hope you can also abide by the boundaries. Now that butterfly in the flower is still in the Devil Palace, I hope you can take care of yourself." After she finished speaking, Moon Weaver didn't stay any longer. She took a step forward and soared into the sky. Hearing the former's last words, killing intent flashed across Ning Chen's eyes. He clenched his fists and suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, dyeing the sand in front of him red. "Ning Chen!" In the distance, Lin Yuzhen rushed over. In the blink of an eye, she arrived in front of him and supported him. Ning Chen straightened his body, and the messy aura on his body gradually receded. A tired smile appeared on his face, and he said, "Your Highness, let's go quickly. If that woman comes back, it will really be troublesome." Lin Yuzhen nodded. She forcefully summoned her true essence to form a heavenly boat and helped the people beside her onto it. After a while, they flew into the sky. The heavenly boat sped along, and a stream of light streaked across the starry sky. On the heavenly boat, the two of them were meditating. After a fierce battle, the two of them were heavily injured, and it was hard for them to completely recover in a short amount of time. After an hour, the two of them temporarily suppressed their injuries. Lin Yuzhen opened her eyes, looked at the man beside her, and said, "Who is that woman, and why did she appear in the Qilin pavilion?" Ning Chen stood up, walked to the front of the heavenly boat, and said seriously, "She is Moon Weaver, a member of the Moon Devil clan, and also the 3rd protector of the Devil Palace. She should have appeared in the Qilin pavilion to take the opportunity to get rid of me. However, because she doesn't have full confidence, she hasn't shed all pretense of cordiality yet." "She is Moon Weaver? What grudge do you have with the Devil Palace for her to deliberately make a move against you?" Lin Yuzhen asked suspiciously. "There is no grudge." Ning Chen shook his head and said calmly, "Thinking about it, I have helped the Devil Palace to resolve quite a number of troubles these days. However, sometimes, grudges aren't important. To the Devil Palace, I no longer have any value. Following this, if the Devil Palace makes a move, my existence will even become their hidden enemy. Therefore, it is not strange that the Devil Palace wants to take the opportunity to get rid of me. Devil Palace? Lin Yuzhen said softly, worry flashing across her eyes. From various signs, the Devil Palace will make a big move. Is this world with surging undercurrents finally going to welcome a drastic change? Your Highness, you don't have to be too worried. Now that the Qilin Pavilion has been destroyed, the alliance between Beiki and the Ji family has already been formed. Even if the Devil Palace wants to make things difficult for you, they will have to think twice, Ningchen said softly. Brother Ning's kindness, I will remember it in my heart. If there is an errand in the future, I will definitely go through water and tread on fire to repay your kindness. Lin Yuzhen said with a serious expression. She knew that the man in front of her had paid a heavy price to help her this time. They really didn't expect that the Qilin Pavilion really had the existence of the Fourth Realm. Your Highness, you are too serious. Ningchen smiled. I can't go back on my promises. After returning to Fengming City, Your Highness should form an alliance with the Ji family as soon as possible to prevent any accidents from happening. I have some matters to attend to, so I will leave first. Hearing that, Lin Yuzhen frowned slightly and said, Brother Ning, aren't you going to stay and recuperate for some time? Ningchen shook his head and said, No need. Even if I stay, I won't have time to recuperate. The news of the Qilin Pavilion's destruction will spread very quickly. When the time comes, there will be many people coming. Your Highness must be mentally prepared. Brother Ning, do you mean that these people are coming with ill intentions? Lin Yuzhen asked seriously. Good intentions aren't important. What's important is that now everyone in the world knows that I am on good terms with Your Highness. After the news of the Qilin Pavilion's destruction spreads, as long as I don't show up, everyone will be cautious and won't dare to act rashly. On the contrary, if I stay in Fengming City, not only will those who come in the future, even a great sect like the Ji family will feel threatened. Instead, it will bring a lot of trouble to Your Highness. Ningchen said calmly. After all, he hadn't stepped into the Fourth Realm. To the people in the world, the threat was greater than the deterrence. Moreover, since he reappeared in this world, several great sects that had been passed down for generations had met with mishaps one after another. It would definitely make the other great sects feel threatened. Therefore, him not showing up was the best choice. What plans does Brother Ning have? Lin Yuzhen asked softly. Ningchen smiled as his gaze looked into the distance and said, All these years, the limelight that should have been shown has been shown. Now, it's time to do some shady things. When the time comes, if I have to trouble Your Highness, I hope that you won't refuse. Lin Yuzhen was stunned. Soon after, she revealed a shocked expression and said, Brother Ning, what do you mean? It's good that Your Highness knows. Don't tell anyone about this matter for the time being. Perhaps, in the future, it will have an unexpected effect. Ningchen said with a smile. Do you have enough manpower in your hands? Lin Yuzhen nodded as she asked with a serious expression. Not enough, so I'm going to leave to find some friends. They've been wandering outside with nothing to do for so long. It's time to find something for them to do. As he spoke, the corners of Ningchen's mouth curled into a strange arc, making people unconsciously shiver and feel uncomfortable all over. Chapter 871. In Fengming City, Ningchen left on the second day after their return. He didn't even attend the alliance ceremony between Beiki and the Ji family. In the Ji family's holy palace, Ji Wechu was sitting on the main seat. He was looking outside the palace as thoughts flashed through his mind. Below the Great Hall, the ninth Grand Elder of the Ji family also had a solemn expression. The ninth son of Mo clan had given them a huge surprise this time. The news of the Qilin Pavilion being destroyed was too shocking. As one of the 11 ancient inheritances, the Ji family knew better than anyone how terrifying a great sect like the Qilin Pavilion was. The strength displayed by the ninth son of Mo clan had already made them feel threatened. Saint Lord, the ninth Grand Elder of the Ji family looked at the man on the main seat and said solemnly, I know what you mean. Ji Wechu calmed himself down and said calmly, Now that the Ji family and Beiki have formed an alliance, the ninth son of Mo clan is a friend and not an enemy. The stronger he is, the more advantageous it is for the Ji family. Even so, the ninth Grand Elder of the Ji family said with worry in his eyes, after the battle of the ancient battlefield, this person has formed grudges with many sects in various star regions. In addition, there have been incidents in the past few days. Every sect will be in danger. It's not certain whether it's a blessing or a curse for the Ji family to be too close to him. Don't think too much. Ji Wechu said calmly, since we've chosen to form an alliance with Beiki, we're already on the same side as this person. If he really has the strength of a fourth realm, this alliance will be worth it. This person is too secretive. I can't see through him. The ninth Grand Elder of the Ji family sighed softly. Everyone has their own secrets. We don't have to investigate too deeply. Now that this person has chosen to leave, we can rest assured. At the same time, it's also a warning to all the sects in the world. After all, no one wants to become the next Qilin Pavilion. Ji Yuechu sighed. The ninth Grand Elder of the Ji family nodded. Since things had come to this, it was useless to think too much. After all, forming an alliance with Beiki had more advantages than disadvantages, especially now that the Demon Palace had appeared. The Ji family didn't lack powerhouses. However, they didn't have the advantage in terms of powerhouses who could intimidate the world and even the Demon Palace. As the two of them chatted, far away in the all-heaven starfield, the majestic demon city was situated between heaven and earth. Numerous demon palaces towered into the sky. It was a majestic and magnificent sight. In the sacred hall of the Devil Palace, within the Supreme Devil Hall, a man clad in a blue robe stood there quietly. His countenance was calm and tranquil, as though he could see through the mysteries of the heavens. His eyes were deep and calm, without the slightest ripple. "Greetings, Saint Priest." Moon Weaver walked in and bowed respectfully. "How is it?" Jie Tian said lightly. Reporting to the Holy Minister, the Qilin Pavilion really did have a fourth realm cultivator. However, he died at the hands of that Jiming Marquis, Moon Weaver replied truthfully. He has 2 immortal swords and the time restriction. In addition, the Qilin Pavilion's old ancestor's vitality is declining and his lifespan is drying up. His cultivation is no longer at its peak and he fears the power of time the most. It is not surprising that such an outcome would occur. Jie Tians replied calmly and continued, "What I want to know is whether he's alive or dead." Moon Weaver was silent for a moment, and then she said, "I wasn't completely confident, so I didn't attack." Jie Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and he said, "With your cultivation and the Moon Devil clan's divine artifact, the Moon Reversal, killing the exhausted 9th son of Mo clan is as easy as lifting a finger. Moon Weaver, you need to give me a satisfactory explanation." Reporting to the Holy Minister, Moon Weaver bowed and said seriously, "The strength displayed by this Jiming Marquis has repeatedly exceeded my expectations. Even under the previous circumstances, he still gave me an extremely dangerous feeling. Therefore, before I am completely confident, I don't want to provoke such a great enemy for the Demon Palace." Jie Tians looked coldly at the woman before him. After a long while, his expression returned to normal and he said indifferently, "Forget it. Since things have come to this, there's no point in pursuing the matter. This child's fate is special. It won't be difficult to find an opportunity to kill him. There's no harm in waiting a few more days." "Thank you for your understanding, Saint Priest." Moon Weaver bowed respectfully. Jie Tians nodded and said, "The time has come. Get to work." Moon Weaver's expression froze when she heard this. She immediately half knelt and said respectfully, "As you command." Moon Weaver stood up and walked out of the hall. 10 days later, at the border between the All-Heaven Starfield and the Luojia Starfield, the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground, the sacred land of the Reverence Moon Clan. Tens of thousands of Reverence Moon Clan members were kneeling before an altar. On the altar, a holy figure was kneeling before a stone statue of the Moon God, praying devoutly. At this moment, in the distant horizon, the demonic clouds hid the moon. One after another, powerful figures descended from the sky. The leader held a red umbrella in her hand. Her beautiful face did not have a trace of human emotion, and was cold to the bone. The Moon Demon Clan and the Reverence Moon Clan had been opposing each other since ancient times. Today, the flames of war had reignited. Beneath the altar, the Reverence Moon Clan members stood up and looked at the numerous figures descending from the sky. Their expressions all turned serious. In front of the Moon God statue, the Reverence Moon Venerable sighed softly. They had finally come. "High Priest, give the order." Below the altar, an azure-robed old man respectfully requested the High Priest. The Reverence Moon Venerable nodded. He looked into the distance and said softly, "Everyone, the holy war is imminent. The glory of the Moon God cannot be blasphemed. In the name of the Reverence Moon Clan's High Priest, today, all blasphemous demons shall be killed without mercy." The Reverence Moon Clan members respectfully saluted and accepted the order. The great battle was about to break out. In the void, more than 100 Moon Demon Clan experts descended. Moon Weaver took a step forward and said coldly, "Kill." Everyone accepted the order. In an instant, one figure after another flew out. Demonic chi filled the sky. The battle between the saints and demons had finally begun. Below the altar, the Reverence Moon Clan members also went up to meet the enemy. Among the experts of the Reverence Moon Clan, two figures stood quietly facing each other. They had the same holy aura, making it impossible to tell who was the saint and who was the demon. "Moon Goddess, please protect your servant and help us slay the demons." In front of the Moon God statue, the Reverence Moon Venerable bowed respectfully and said softly. As soon as he finished speaking, the Moon God statue on the altar shone brightly. White moonlight shone and entered the bodies of the Reverence Moon Clan members on the battlefield. "What's the use of begging that illusory Moon God now? Do you think she can protect you?" The Moon Weaver looked at the woman on the altar and said coldly, "Blasphemy against the gods is unforgivable. Today, I will make you pay for it in front of the gods." The Reverence Moon Venerable replied coldly. He walked down the altar step by step. The aura around him grew stronger and stronger. Under the support of the Moon God's power, his body broke through the limits and reached the peak of his life. Seeing this, the Moon Weaver waved her delicate hand. In the midst of flowing light, the inverted moon appeared again. The moment the sword was unsheathed, the sky was filled with multicolored light. In the next moment, the sword passed through the sky, filling the sky with killing intent. 12 forms of spiritual rhino, heaven-raising waterfall. As soon as they made their moves, they collided with each other. Their moves collided, and boundless flames of battle instantly arose. Tempestuous waves surged endlessly, and a force that could destroy the heavens and the earth swiftly swept out. In the clash of sword and palm, the Reverence Moon Venerable used the Moon God's power to instantly seize the initiative. His palms swept up a flood, splitting the sky and splitting the sea. With a boom, the raging waves spread for thousands of miles. The Moon Weaver lightly moved her feet, dodging the raging waves. Then her sword condensed wind yuan and slashed down. 12 forms of spiritual rhino, sky soul burial. With a long shout, the Reverence Moon Venerable flipped his palms, condensing moonlight that filled the sky. He countered with a move, and the raging waves met the light of the divine sword. The two moves collided, and the sky darkened. The Reverence Moon Venerable took a step forward, and his figure rushed out. The energy in his palms converged, and the extreme power appeared again. 12 forms of spiritual rhino, splitting the sea and splitting the flood. The moonlight fell from the sky, and thousands of caddies converged. The Reverence Moon Venerable's palm condensed 100 times, and it broke through the sea. The Moon Weaver focused her eyes and waved her sword. The dazzling sword light soared into the sky. The moon on the water softly cried, and the void turned upside down. The raging waves shook the divine sword, and the sky and earth instantly turned upside down. However, in the midst of the raging waves, the waterfall reversed and actually counterattacked the Reverence Moon Venerable. The Reverence Moon Venerable's expression darkened. He took a step forward and dodged the shocking waterfall. Gathering his energy, he slapped the person in front of him. With a boom, the sword and palm collided again. The aftershock roared in all directions, and the Reverence Moon Venerable's divine power appeared again. The Reverence Moon Venerable's body became light, and he involuntarily soared into the sky. Destitute head blue sky, moon descends sky. With one move, the Moon Weaver took a step forward and soared into the sky. Her sword split open the starry sky, and the yellow springs appeared again. The Reverence Moon Venerable focused, and did not dare to be careless. He gathered his energy, and a gale coiled around his body. The raging waves swept out and fell from the sky. With a boom, the raging waves dissipated, and the sword light shattered. The divine sword showed its power, and the Reverence Moon Venerable's figure sank, and he fell from the sky. After 100 feet, the Reverence Moon Venerable stopped his fall. He looked at the woman in the sky and said coldly, "Is this the divine weapon of the Moon Demon clan? It really lives up to its name." The Moon Weaver's figure slowly descended from the sky. The moonlight in her hands became even more dazzling. The peerless divine weapon was shocking. Just as the battle between the saints and demons was about to begin again, far away in the endless starry sky, a plain-clothed figure was constantly moving forward, chasing after the footsteps of his close friends in search of their traces. In the Sky Mist Star region, in the Sky Pass Holy City, a great sect with a long history, the peace was broken today. Catch him! A furious roar reverberated in the holy city. An instant later, a purple light flashed past, and his clothes were tattered. He was in an abnormally sorry state. "Didn't I just take a piece of scrap metal from you? Is there a need to kill all of us? I've done so much for you, so what if I take a piece of scrap metal from you?" Luo Xingxian turned around and cursed, but he did not dare to stop at all. He quickly rushed forward. "Don't let him escape. Catch him quickly." An angry voice rang out in the holy city. As the voice rang out, numerous figures flew out from the depths of the holy city. Their auras were majestic, and their cultivations were incomparably powerful. None of them were below the true realm. They moved together to chase after a young man who was only at the mid-corporeal realm. The scene was truly indescribable. "You bastards, so many people are chasing after me. Do you have any shame?" Luo Xingxian cursed again when he saw several figures appear behind him. His figure sped up, and he desperately fled out of the holy city. The chase left all the people in the city dumbfounded. No one knew what was going on. "Friend, long time no see. You're in such a sorry state." At this moment, a plain-clothed figure appeared in the sky. He smiled as he looked at the rapidly fleeing figure. Chapter 872. In the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground, the Moon Devil race and the Reverence Moon race were at war. Blood dyed the ground red, and corpses littered the ground. At the center of the battle, the Reverence Moon Venerable and the Moon Weaver faced each other. The name of the Reverence Moon Venerable shall be reborn today. 3 lives reincarnation sword. The Moon Weaver took a step forward, causing mountains to crumble. The Moon Weaver's sword soared into the sky, and the 3 lives reincarnation sword appeared for the first time. Martial arts that surpassed the limits of the world caused the wind and clouds to change. Thunder and lightning descended, and 3 illusory figures appeared. Under the moonlight, they danced with their swords. Their profoundness was boundless, and it was as if the sword gods had descended to teach the heavens their martial arts. The Reverence Moon Venerable's spirit condensed, and his hands moved in the air. Boundless energy surged, and 10,000 rays of light converged. Reincarnation appeared, and 3 lives appeared at the same time. A world-shaking sword tore through the sky, and the 3 swords danced together, splitting the night sky into 3. "Ha!" The sword light arrived, and the Reverence Moon Venerable roared. He stepped into the air, and without dodging, his palm met the sword might head-on. The power of the Holy Devil race collided once more, and after a moment of stalemate, they rapidly devoured each other. In the blink of an eye, the 2 forces exploded, and a terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. Drip! Scarlet drops fell from the sky. The 2 of them looked at each other, and their arms were dyed red. They were evenly matched in this battle of extreme moves. Since ancient times, there was no room for mercy. The killing intent in the Reverence Moon Venerable's eyes grew stronger and stronger, and his usual holiness turned into killing intent. On the other hand, the moon weaver's red umbrella blocked the moonlight. Her country-toppling beauty was indifferent, and her devil chi was nowhere to be seen. It was difficult to distinguish between the holy devil race and the holy devil race. The only thing that could be seen was the increasing pressure. Bring out your full strength. Otherwise, none of you will be able to leave today. The Reverence Moon Venerable said coldly. His right palm shook, and the moon god statue behind him shone even brighter. It gathered around his body, increasing the pressure. As you wish. The moon weaver indifferently replied. She released her left hand, and the red umbrella floated with the wind, flying away from the battlefield. As the seal left her body, moonlight illuminated her body. In an instant, an abnormally terrifying aura erupted from Moon Weaver's body. At first, it was pure and holy like a god, but a moment later, a demonic wave soared into the heavens, chilling to the bone. The Moon Weaver's long hair danced in the wind as demonic energies surged around her. The moon-shaped mark on her forehead exuded an aura that made one's heart palpitate. It was something that had never been seen before. Most of his body had entered the fourth realm, and he was only one step away from ascending to immortality and transcending the mortal world. Upon seeing this, Bai Yu's face turned solemn and he shouted softly. Godly rays shot up into the sky and streaks of light shot out from the moon god statue on the altar. The moon god battle armor appeared and the 26 pieces of armor attached themselves onto the moon god battle armor. The two of them revealed their trump cards for the first time. Before they even clashed, boundless pressure surged out violently. Expanse after expanse of the void collapsed under the extreme pressure, and it was difficult to repair. Kill! With the addition of her demonic form, killing intent filled her eyes. Moon Weaver's figure vanished in an instant. When she reappeared, her sword light was dazzling, and the battle had begun. Waterfall! Bai Yu the Venerable condensed godly light in his hands and unleashed a tremendous amount of power. With a massive boom, divine power shook the edge of the sword. Moon Weaver felt a tremendous force pass through her sword, and she flew back hundreds of meters. Is this the power of the moon god battle armor? Moon Weaver stabilized herself and looked at the moon god battle armor on the woman in front of her. Bai Yu the Venerable didn't say anything. He took a step forward and his figure flashed forward once more, his slender hands swatting at the former. Moon Weaver narrowed her eyes and dodged to the side. She then raised her hand and gathered Yuan to counterattack. With a bang, the palm energy was added to the moon god battle armor, but the moonlight lingered and the palm energy dissipated. Naive to the extreme. Bai Yu the Venerable sneered and struck out with his palm energy, adding a tremendous amount of power to the former's body. Ugh! With a muffled groan, Moon Weaver was sent flying again, her clothes dyed red. The situation had changed, and the moon god battle armor appeared for the first time. Every move was peerless and divine. Pay with your life for my clansmen. Bai Yu the Venerable shouted coldly. His figure sped forward, his divine clothes flowing with light. His attacks were powerful and shocking. When the killing move arrived, Moon Weaver's expression actually calmed down. The inverted water in her hand shone brilliantly with moonlight. Demonic chi roiled, and a dark silver brilliance shot into the moonlight. The moon demon form manifested, the opposition of saint and demon, colliding with each other. With a boom, waves surged, and the aftershocks continued. Bai Yu was sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His expression was gloomy. Moon God. Bai Yu the Venerable looked at the illusory demon battle armor behind the woman in front of him. What is a god? What is a demon? The demon battle armor returned to her body. Moon Weaver walked forward step by step, her long hair dancing in the wind. Her killing intent was bone-piercing. Her expression was indifferent. The difference between gods and demons is just the imagination of ignorant people. What right do weak humans have to talk about gods and demons? Arrogant. Bai Yu the Venerable's expression was cold. With a flip of his hand, endless divine power surged out of his divine clothes. Moonlight shone down, illuminating the world. 1 is the beginning of numbers, 9 is the end of numbers. Reincarnation Sword, 9 Lives 1. The Moon Weaver held her sword horizontally, her fingers slicing through the air. Immediately, dark silver demon chi surged out. Layer after layer of sword light manifested and merged into one. The 9 Lives Reincarnation Sword, the number 9. The sword power rose rapidly, multiplying by 100 times in an instant. Its demonic might shook the world. At the peak of life, blood and chi were endless. The two descendants of gods and demons displayed the most terrifying level of power, surpassing the limits of the world. The pressure was boundless and unparalleled, approaching the legendary 4th level. The two extremes collided. The two extreme powers devoured each other, turning the void within 1,000 miles into a black hole. No light appeared, and the world seemed dead. In the aftermath, two figures slowly descended. Their auras clashed, bringing with them a dazzling waterfall of blood. Moon Weaver, the demon palace has achieved its goal. It's time to retreat. Also, as he spoke, a purple-robed figure walked out from the void. He looked into the distance and said indifferently, "House Master, show yourself." As expected, I can't hide from my old friend's eyes. A familiar voice was heard, and in the next moment, a handsome figure wearing a silver-gray cloak descended from the sky. He looked at the two people in front of him and said with a smile, "Shinji, Baiyu, greetings." "House Master Xiaoyu." Baiyu the Venerable's expression darkened, and he could not suppress his anger. "House Master, shouldn't you give us an explanation?" Shinji looked at the man standing opposite him and said calmly, "The price offered by the Demon Palace is hard for me to refuse. Business is business, isn't it?" Xiaoyu the House Master smiled. Shinji's eyes narrowed. For the House Master to be willing to become enemies with the world, it seems that the Demon Palace has promised an incredible return. However, you must think clearly. No matter how good the price is, it's worthless if you don't live to enjoy it. I will remember my friend's reminder. Since my friend is here, why don't we call it quits today? Xiaoyu the House Master smiled. Shinji glanced at the battle below and said indifferently, "Sure." "Shinji," Baiyu said anxiously. Shinji raised his hand and stopped him from continuing. He looked at the two people in front of him and said, "Go back and tell your saint that this is not 30,000 years ago. If the Demon Palace is still stubborn, we will accompany them. I will pass on your message." After saying that, Xiaoyu the House Master's body shone brightly. She took the woman beside her and disappeared. On the ground, the Moon Demon Clan's experts also shone with a dazzling light and left together. Shinji, Baiyu the Venerable was anxious, and his internal injuries exploded. He staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Let's talk later. Let's heal first." Shinji helped the former up, and their silhouettes flashed, heading toward the altar below. Baiyu the Venerable sat cross-legged on the moon god altar. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. In front of him, the moon god statue shone with light to help him heal. After an hour, Baiyu the Venerable opened his eyes and looked at the man standing in front of him. He said, "Shinji, please give me an explanation." Shinji turned around and looked at the woman in front of him. He sighed and said, "Baiyu, I know that the Baiyu clan and the Moon Demon clan have a deep grudge. However, the Demon Palace is the strongest now. It is impossible for the Baiyu clan to deal with them alone. The most important thing is to preserve your strength before the final battle." Baiyu the Venerable's face flashed with unwillingness. However, he knew that what Shinji said was true. Even if they fought the Moon Demon clan to the end, both sides would suffer great losses. For the Demon Palace, which was at its peak, it was not enough to hurt them. The Demon Palace had shown the world how terrifying they were 30,000 years ago. After 30,000 years of recuperation, even if they only recovered 10 or 20% of their original strength, it was enough to sweep the world. Heavenly Mist Star Field, Heavenly U City. The entire city was mobilized to chase the thief who stole the holy relic. The people in the city were shocked and looked up at the sky. In the void, Sui walked out. Looking at her old friend who was being chased, a gloating expression appeared on her face. However, she had no intention of helping. He knew her friend's character better than anyone. Her ability to cause trouble was first class, and her ability to escape was unparalleled. Even he felt inferior to her. Back then, this guy betrayed the Zhao family when he was still in the Xiantian realm. The Zhao family had so many third calamity experts, but none of them could catch him. Who would have thought that after 100 years, this guy's ability to cause trouble and escape had improved? This voice? Luo Xingchen was startled when he heard the familiar voice by his ear. He immediately looked to his left. When he saw the person who had arrived, he revealed a surprised expression. Without saying anything, he immediately changed his direction and fled. Behind him, the Heavenly Yu Sacred City's divine generals saw this and narrowed their eyes. An expert. Not allowing anything to happen to the holy relic, 3 Heavenly Yu divine generals rushed over and stood between the two, blocking their way. Luo Xingchen stopped and looked at the man in plain clothes behind the 3 Heavenly Yu divine generals. He said, "Ji Ming, hurry and help." As soon as he finished speaking, another 4 Heavenly Yu divine generals rushed over. They looked at the young man not far away and were on guard. "Everyone, please continue. I'm just passing by," Ningchen said with a smile. Then, he deliberately stepped back to give the two sides some space. "Ji Ming, you bastard!" Luo Xingchen was stunned at first. After a while, he recovered and cursed angrily. Chapter 873. The 7 divine generals were chasing after Luo Xingchen in the Heavenly Yu Sacred City. The situation was tense, and a fight could break out at any moment. Outside the battle, a white-haired figure in plain clothes stood quietly with a smile on his face. He was observing the development of the situation. "Luo Xingchen, hand over the sacred mark iron and come with us to apologize to the city master. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." The leader of the 7 divine generals, a middle-aged man, said coldly, "Don't even think about it. I will be chopped into pieces by the city master if I go back with you. Do you think I am stupid?" Luo Xingchen replied with disdain. He looked around without leaving a trace, trying to find a way to escape. "You want to do this the hard way? Catch him." The middle-aged man snorted coldly. Under his command, his figure flashed past and he raised his hand to catch the thief in the battle. The first divine general made his move, and the other 6 divine generals followed suit. They attacked fiercely, trying to catch the thief alive. Murder! The divine general of the sacred city is killing the innocent. In the battle, Luo Xingchen used a strange footwork to avoid wave after wave of attacks. On the other hand, he found a gap and shouted loudly. The first divine general heard it and frowned. He paused and hesitated. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen immediately ran away and flashed past the first divine general. "Where are you going?" The first divine general came back to his senses. He stepped forward and blocked Luo Xingchen again. He raised his hand and grabbed Luo Xingchen's shoulder. Luo Xingchen immediately retreated and avoided the person in front of him. He ran in another direction. "You can't escape." The 3rd and 5th divine generals appeared in front of him and blocked his way. Behind him, the 2nd and 6th divine generals caught up and blocked his way. On the other side, the 4th and 7th divine generals flashed and blocked the last escape route. All paths would be blocked. Luo Xingchen's gaze swept back and forth. When he saw that there was really no place to escape, he couldn't help but look at the figure outside the battle. His eyes turned and he shouted, "It's that person who ordered me to steal your holy relic." The 7 divine generals were stunned when they heard it. They subconsciously looked at the figure in plain clothes not far away. Luo Xingchen saw the opportunity. He clenched his left hand and the star mark appeared. For arrows were shot at the 2 divine generals in front of him. "Ha!" The 3rd and 5th divine generals came back to their senses. They immediately retreated and avoided the arrows. In the blink of an eye, the purple-robed figure flashed past. His fleeing speed was so fast that it was shocking. In the blink of an eye, he was far away. The 7 divine generals' faces darkened as they quickly chased after him. As they passed by, they looked at the plain-clothed young man not far away and could not hide their wariness. Ningchen nodded at the 7 of them with a smile on his face. He did not make a move, nor did he stop them. The reputation of this heavenly sacred city seemed to be pretty good. Luo Xingchen, this brat, had stolen their sacred object. When the 7 great divine generals took action, they only wanted to capture him alive and didn't kill him. This was truly admirable. Behind the 7 great godly generals, Ning Chen followed them unhurriedly. He maintained a certain distance from the beginning and did not interfere in the matter between the two sides. At the front, Luo Xingchen fled with all his might, not daring to stop for even a moment. The 7 divine generals continued their pursuit. When they saw that the end of the holy city's territory was right in front of them, they became even more anxious. Once they left the territory of the holy city, they would enter the territory of the other forces. If they did not handle it well, it might cause a conflict between the 2 great heritages. At the end of the heavenly sacred city, where the 2 worlds intersected, Luo Xingchen stopped in his tracks. Looking at the few people chasing after him, he laughed arrogantly. "I'm going out. Go ahead and chase after me. Go ahead and chase after me. Also, Jiming your uncle. Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I will shoot you into a hornet's nest." After saying that, Luo Xingchen laughed out loud again. Immediately after, he turned around and fled out of the heavenly sacred city. Ouch! Suddenly, Luo Xingchen cried out in pain. Before he could regain his senses, his body was slapped out and crashed onto the ground. "City Master!" Seeing the old man in front of them, the 7 great divine generals were stunned and immediately bowed respectfully. "Bring him back!" The city master of heavenly sacred city said calmly. "Yes." The 7 great divine generals obeyed. Their figures swept down and surrounded the figure on the ground. "Luo Xingchen, come back with us. If you resist again, don't blame us for being ruthless." Among the 7 great divine generals, the only female general who was ranked 7th looked at the person in front of her and said angrily, "I won't resist. Definitely won't resist." Luo Xingchen replied shamelessly with a smile. His eyes looked at the old figure standing in the sky and couldn't help but have a headache. Why did this old monster come out personally? Is he going to let me live? The 7th great divine general went forward and clasped Luo Xingchen's shoulder. She reprimanded, "Let's go. Behave yourself." Luo Xingchen rubbed his head and was pushed forward unwillingly. "It's over. I didn't manage to escape. I'm in trouble now." Above the void, Ning Chen walked over. Looking at the scene below, he smiled. He didn't know why, but when he saw this fellow suffering, his mood was surprisingly good. At the edge of the heavenly sacred city, the city master looked at the plain-clothed young man in front of him. After staring at him for a long time, he said, "Thank you for not interfering with the matters of my sacred city." "City master is too polite." Ning Chen cupped his fist and bowed. He smiled and said, "I have long heard of the reputation of the heavenly city master. I have never had the chance to meet you. Now that I have met you today, you are indeed worthy of your reputation." "You flatter me," the heavenly city master replied softly. He looked at the young man who was being dragged away by Xiaoqi and said, "You and Luo Xingchen are friends, right?" Ning Chen nodded and didn't hide anything. He replied, "A friend of life and death." "If that's the case, please have a seat in the city." Luo Xingchen stole the sacred relic of the sacred city. His crime is not light. It will be difficult for him to leave in a short time, the city master said politely. "Then I will have to trouble the city master." Ning Chen didn't refuse and stepped forward to follow him. In the sacred city's city master's residence, the 7th godly general dragged Luo Xingchen to the front of the sky prison and pushed him in. She said angrily, "Go in and reflect on your actions." "Luo Xingchen, I really misjudged you. The sacred city sincerely took you in, but you repaid kindness with enmity." "7th elder sister, please calm down. How would I dare to steal the sacred relic of the sacred city? I just borrowed it." In the sky prison, Luo Xingchen had a fawning smile as he said, "7th elder sister, you're a magnanimous person. Please forgive me this time. Also, can 7th elder sister help me put in a good word for the city lord?" Hearing this, the 7th godly general was so angry that she was speechless. After living for so long, This was the first time she saw such a shameless person. Seventh elder sister? Luo Xingchen called out again. The seventh godly general clenched her fists and suppressed the anger in her heart. She snorted and turned to leave. Seventh elder sister, don't forget to plead for me. Looking at the seventh elder's back view, Luo Xingchen shouted in the sky prison. Get lost. A furious reply came. After a while, the sky prison's door closed with a bang and the seventh godly general disappeared. Not good enough. Luo Xingchen mumbled in boredom. He sat in the sky prison and stared at the door in a daze. Yo, isn't this our all-powerful hero who saved the world? Why are you locked in the prison? After saying that, a plain-clothed figure appeared in the sky prison. He looked at his good friend in the sky prison and teased him. You are ungrateful for not saving me when I am in danger. Hearing this, Luo Xingchen jumped up and scolded the person in front of him. Goodbye. Hearing this, Ningchen turned and left. Hey, don't. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen quickly changed her words and said, Brother Ning, since you are here, why don't you chat for a while? Can we chat? Ningchen stopped and raised his eyebrows. Luo Xingchen nodded vigorously. Ningchen then turned around and took 2 steps forward. He smiled and said, I say, why are you so bored that you would steal someone else's sacred item? Great, now you've been caught. It's all because you did not save me. Luo Xingchen replied in a bad mood. If I save you, I will be helping the evildoer do evil. I can't tell right from wrong. Stop. Luo Xingchen quickly interrupted the former and said, I know you are very reasonable. All right, I did not want to steal their sacred item. I just wanted to borrow it. Hearing this, Ningchen looked at the person in front of him. After a long while, he said with disdain, I would be a fool to believe you. Hearing this, Luo Xingchen was furious. He pointed at the former and scolded, Jiming Marquis, I have tolerated you for a long time. You want to fight? When I get out, I will beat you up so badly that even your own mother won't recognize you. That will have to wait until you can get out. Ningchen stepped forward and knocked on the cage of the celestial prison from behind. He nodded in satisfaction and said, This material is really good. Not to mention that your cultivation is sealed now. Even if it wasn't, you would still need to smash it for a few hours. Ji Ming, you are really my good friend. Luo Xingchen gritted his teeth in anger. The Sky Yu Sacred City's Sky Lock prison was famous. Not to mention him, even a true realm expert could not escape from it. Alright, where did you hide the sacred item? Ningchen asked curiously. Luo Xingchen looked at the former cautiously and asked. Ningchen was speechless. This guy still wanted to keep that piece of broken metal. What was wrong with his head? Luo Xingchen rolled his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and said, Ji Ming, can we discuss something? Let's hear it. Ningchen said calmly. Luo Xingchen walked half a step forward and grabbed the cage door. He said excitedly, Ji Ming, how about this? If you save me, I will give you half of that piece of broken metal. Ningchen looked at his good friend and said, Luo Xingchen, I really admire you. Admire me for what? Luo Xingchen was confused and asked. I admire you for being so shameless. Ningchen said with disdain. Ji Ming. Luo Xingchen was so angry that his chest was blocked. He pointed at the person in front of him and gritted his teeth. Are you going to save me or not? Just say it. Ningchen looked at the former indifferently and said, No. You. Luo Xingchen gritted his teeth and said, Don't go too far when you do things. Tell me, what do I have to do for you to save me? Ningchen smiled and raised his hand to knock on the door of the Skylock prison. He said, This thing is really sturdy. No wonder the Sky Yu City Lord let me see you without worry. I will not do something as shameful as breaking out of prison. However, it is not difficult to negotiate with the Sky Yu City Lord to exchange you out. As for the price? When he spoke up to here, the corners of Ningchen's mouth curled up slightly into a spurious smile that caused others to be unable to help but feel a chill run down their spines. He said, Good friend, don't wander about aimlessly after you come out. Come with me to do something. Chaos is about to arrive, so we can't do nothing, right? Chapter 874. Sky Moon Sacred City. Blue and white flowers fluttered in the wind. Inside the city lord's mansion, there was a dazzling blue flame everywhere. The scene was mesmerizing. In a small pavilion in the west garden, two figures sat inside. Outside the pavilion, the fourth and seventh divine generals stood quietly. They looked at the white-haired young man in the pavilion with fear in their eyes. As the top experts in the world, although they couldn't see through this young man's cultivation, their instincts as warriors told them that this person was very strong. He might not be weaker than the city lord. Mr. Ning, this should be your first time in Sky Moon City. How do you feel? In the pavilion, the city lord raised his tea and asked. A paradise on earth, a paradise. Ningchen raised his teacup and didn't hesitate to praise. It's good that Mr. Ning likes it. The city lord took a sip of the blue and white flower tea and said, although Sky Moon City is far away, I have heard of Mr. Ning's fame. Seeing you today, I can see that you are indeed a dragon among men. Your temperament is extraordinary. City Lord is overpraising me. Ningchen smiled and said, City Lord doesn't need to add gold to my face. I know very well what the rumors say about me. I don't deserve the fame, but the infamy is more appropriate. The city lord smiled faintly and said, seeing is believing. If Mr. Ning is really as evil as the rumors say, you wouldn't have let Luo Xingqian be captured by Sky Moon City today. City Lord, although my friend doesn't play by the rules, he isn't someone who bites the hand that feeds him. He stole your city's sacred item and is only borrowing it. He won't really not return it. Ningchen said seriously. I understand. The city lord nodded and said, I have lived for so long. I don't have any other skills, but I do have a good eye for people. Luo Xingqian isn't a bad person. He has contributed a lot in these years since he came to Sky Moon City. However, the crime of stealing the sacred mark iron is not small. It's good to let him reflect on it. City Lord must have known that my friend is after the sacred mark iron. Ningchen smiled. The City Lord nodded and said, he once asked to borrow it from me to reforge his star mark bow. However, the sacred mark iron is our city's sacred item and can't be easily given to the outside world. Therefore I rejected him. Ningchen chuckled and said, it seems like the loss of the sacred mark iron was also a trap set by the city lord. Unfortunately, Luo Xingqian didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and really fell into the trap. The Sky Ascension City Lord put down the teacup in his hand and said, Mr. Ning is wrong about that. Luo Xingqian must have seen that this is a trap. However, this is his only chance and he has no choice but to jump in. The City Lord is wise. Ningchen stood up, clasped his fists and praised. It's not that brilliant. Sky Moon City had the upper hand in this matter. It's not strange that Luo Xingqian failed. Moreover, he didn't really want to fall out with Holy City, so he had a lot of concerns when he attacked. Otherwise, with his strength, even if I personally attacked, it wouldn't be so easy to catch him. The Sky Moon City Lord smiled. I admire the City Lord's magnanimity. Luo Xingqian was indeed in the wrong in this matter. I wonder how I can make up for it in order to offset my friend's mistake, Ningchen said seriously. Is Mr. Ning in a hurry to take him away? The Skysoar City Lord asked. There are indeed some matters that require his help. Ningchen nodded. The Skysoar City Lord looked at the plain-clothed young man in front of him and said, originally, I only wanted to lock Luo Xingqian up for a while and then let him go after a little beating. However, since Mr. Ning has pleaded for mercy, it's not impossible to release him in advance. However, if we just let him go like this, it will definitely be difficult to appease the public. If Mr. Ning wants to take him out of the sky prison, you need to do something for my city. As long as Mr. Ning completes this task, I will immediately order Luo Xingqian to be released. I can even lend him the sacred mark iron for 3 days. Please speak, City Lord. Ningchen's expression turned serious. According to this, there is a fallen soul abyss 7,000 miles away. The power of the laws there is extremely strong and it is difficult for humans and ghosts to enter. However, because of this, there is a unique Sick King stone in this world. This stone is very unique and very difficult to find. My Sky Ascension City has searched for hundreds of years and only found a few scattered pieces. It is very difficult to become a treasure. Therefore, I hope Mr. Ning can make a trip there on my behalf, the Sky Ascension City Lord said seriously. How much of this stone does your city need? Ning Chen asked. The Sky Ascension City Lord reached out a hand and gently grasped it. He calmly said, I only need this much. As Ning Chen saw this, a strange light flashed in his eyes. He said, it seems this sick king stone is truly difficult to find. The Sky Ascension City Lord nodded. I won't hide it from Mr. Ning. This matter is indeed not easy. However, Mr. Ning's strength is extraordinary. Perhaps you can go deeper into the Fallen Soul Abyss and find enough sick king stones. I know what to do. Ning Chen nodded. I will immediately set out to find this item for your city. I also ask the city lord to take good care of my friend and not let anything happen to him. Don't worry, Mr. Ning. The Sky Ascension City Lord solemnly replied. In Sky Ascension City, as long as this city lord is here, no one can harm his life. Mr. Ning will definitely encounter many troubles on this trip to the Fallen Soul Abyss. I will have Little Seven send you there. Along the way, I will also explain to Mr. Ning the situation in detail. Then I will have to thank the city lord. Ning Chen did not refuse. He stood up and said, It's getting late. I will set out now and try to reach the Fallen Soul Abyss before sunset. The Sky Ascension City Lord gently nodded. He looked at the 7th Divine General outside the pavilion and said, Little Seven, accompany Mr. Ning on this trip. The 7th Divine General cupped his fists and respectfully accepted the order. Ning Chen stepped out of the pavilion. The 7th Divine General stepped forward and said, Mr. Please. Ning Chen nodded and continued to walk forward. The two immediately set out. Without any delay, they rushed out of the Sky Ascension City together. To the west of Sky Ascension City, two figures sped past. Their speed became faster and faster. Not long after, they disappeared under the setting sun. As the sun set, the two figures stopped in front of an abyss that stretched for thousands of miles. The 7th Divine General looked at the abyss in front of him and said with a dignified expression, We're here. Mr. Ning, you must be careful. If you feel that you can't hold on any longer, come out as soon as possible. I understand. Miss, you can go back first. Ning Chen softly replied. He took a step and leapt into the abyss in front of him. Sky Ascension City. In a small pavilion in the West Garden, the Sky Ascension City Lord stood quietly. He looked at the setting sun in the west and a strange light flashed in his eyes. City Lord. Outside the pavilion, the 4th Divine General hesitated for a long time. Finally, he couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart and asked, Do you really trust this Mr. Ning? In the rumors of the world, this person's reputation isn't that great. He wouldn't come to the Sky Ascension City with other intentions, right? Whether or not he has other intentions, I don't know. However, the only thing I can be sure of is that this Mr. Ning isn't as evil as the rumors say. The Sky Ascension City Lord said with a calm expression, I'm sure you know about the Qilin Pavilion being destroyed. What do you think is the possibility of my Sky Ascension City stopping the falling stars if he interferes in today's situation? The 4th Divine General fell silent. After a moment, he shook his head and said, This subordinate doesn't know. Not even 10%. The Sky Ascension City Lord said faintly, This person's strength has already surpassed mine. In other words, in this world, unless a true 4th realm cultivator makes a move, no one can stop him. Even those old monsters who have been corroded by time can't do it. The 4th Divine General was shocked. After a long time, he suppressed the shock in his heart and said, City Lord, you mean that this person's strength is already comparable to a 4th realm cultivator? The Sky Ascension City Lord nodded and said, Perhaps, compared to a true 4th realm cultivator, there is still a gap. However, this gap is no longer that of heaven and earth. The 4th Divine General's heart stirred again and said, City Lord, didn't you say that an old monster like the Qilin ancestor who has withered up his vitality can't be considered a true 4th realm cultivator? I did say that, but even so, a 4th realm cultivator is still a 4th realm cultivator. As long as one has reached this height, his martial arts knowledge and comprehension are beyond the reach of ordinary people. This Mr. Ning was able to defeat such an old monster without suffering fatal injuries. At least, it means that his strength is above the Qilin ancestors. As for how much stronger he is, no one knows. The Sky Ascension City Lord sighed softly. 100 years ago, in the ancient battlefield, when he schemed against the star venerables of the various regions, he still needed to use restrictions and fairy weapons. I didn't expect that in just 100 years, he would be able to look down on the strongest people in the world, the fourth divine general said with a complicated expression. One's level of tolerance determines one's achievements, and vice versa. Looking at his words and actions today, he is definitely worthy of the evaluation of a heaven's chosen. Today, who still remembers that this Mr. Ning is only a young man who has cultivated for 100 years? Not to mention the younger generation of the various sects in the world, even us old immortals who have lived for 1,000 years can't compare to him. The rumors and slanders of the world are mostly caused by jealousy and fear. If we also look at people with such eyes, how are we different from those people? The Sky Eclipse City Lord said calmly. City Lord, you are right. I know I was wrong. The fourth divine general bowed respectfully and said, sometimes, trust is also a kind of cultivation. The Sky Ascension City Lord turned around and looked at the fourth divine general behind him. He said, birds of a feather flock together. If Luo Xingchen didn't steal the divine Mark Iron today, and Mr. Ning came to our city as a guest, would your impression of him change a little? By the same logic, since you could trust Luo Xingchen in the past, you should do the same now. Of course, since he made a mistake, he should be punished. Let him reflect in the celestial prison for a few days. The fourth divine general hesitated for a moment and said, City Lord, Seventh Sister has been in charge of the celestial prison. I am worried that with Seventh Sister's temper, Luo Xingchen will suffer a lot. Now that Mr. Ning is here, do I need to warn Seventh Sister? No need. The Sky Ascension City Lord smiled faintly and said, it's good to let him suffer a little. Haven't you seen Mr. Ning's attitude? If he really couldn't tell right from wrong, he would have saved him long ago. They are friends who have gone through life and death together, not fair-weather friends. Their friendship is not as shallow as you think. He would rather risk his life and enter the fallen soul abyss for Luo Xingchen's sake than to save him by force. But it's because he doesn't want his friend to bear a lifetime of bad reputation like him. Chapter 875. In the moonlit night, a cool breeze blew past. The sound of leaves rustling could be heard everywhere. In the fallen soul abyss, a white-haired figure in plain clothes walked forward. His expression was calm and peaceful. In the past 100 years, he had gone through countless life and death situations. His knowing destiny heart was as calm as still water. The quiet autumn night gradually cooled down. His thin clothes danced in the wind. However, the figure walking forward did not seem to feel the chill of the night. After walking for more than an hour, the bright moon rose higher and higher in the east. The crescent moon curved and illuminated the mountain stream. Ayo! In the distance, a wolf's howl could be heard, echoing in the mountain stream. However, there were no traces of life in the mountain stream. If it were not for the scattered ancient trees, the entire fallen soul abyss would seem like a land of death. It made people shudder. Ningchen walked quietly in the abyss. There was not much change in his eyes. He had come to many unknown places like this before. He did not know when it started, but he had gradually forgotten his initial fear. Bang! 100 zhang away, an eagle's corpse fell down and smashed into a rock. Blood splashed several steps away. The night was so dazzling, as if it was reminding people where the fallen soul abyss came from. Ningchen was silent. He flipped his right hand and the rocks in the distance rumbled, burying the eagle's corpse into the ground. Caw! Somewhere, the caw of a black crow reverberated in the air above the abyss. After a while, it disappeared into the distance, making the silent night seem even colder. After walking for another hour, the color of the rocks around him gradually darkened. In the mountain stream, the power of the laws of heaven and earth became heavier. As far as his eyes could see, There was less and less life. Ningchen stopped and looked at the rocks around him. He waved his right hand and a sword light flashed past. Immediately, the mountain shook and rocks flew everywhere. A piece of rock flew in front of him. Ningchen grabbed it and scanned it with his spiritual sense. Then, he clenched his right hand and crushed the black rock in his hand. This place was indeed unusual. The special terrain and the power of the laws made the rocks here much stronger than normal rocks. However, this was not the sick king's stone that the city lord of Tianyue City had mentioned. After thinking for a while, Ningchen continued forward. He released his spiritual sense and searched for the sick king's stone. The cold moon moved west. In the fallen soul abyss, the temperature dropped lower and lower. After a while, the air condensed into frost. The path forward was covered in frost. Behind Ningchen, on the mountain road, clear footprints appeared one after another. They got deeper and deeper and gradually covered his ankles. After going more than 100 kilometers deep, the abyss had truly turned into a land of death. Everywhere was a ghastly hell. The heart-palpitating blackness had become the only visible sight. Ningchen's eyes gradually became serious. The silver light around his body shone brightly. Amidst the falling snow, his body slowly rose. Beneath him, there were knee-deep footprints, making it difficult to advance. The terrifying laws of the world wiped out all possibility of survival, making it difficult for humans and ghosts to enter. The wind and snow danced, paving the way forward. Ningchen walked forward step by step, the Zhen Qi in his body rapidly depleting as he constantly resisted the power of the world laws pressing down on him. With the three bodies gathered, his foundation was unparalleled. Under the fourth level, he was the true number one under the heavens, fighting against the heavens and earth once again. After another 100 miles, suddenly, a watery light entered Ningchen's eyes. Ningchen's pupils constricted as he strode forward. The 10-mile-long river was completely still. Not a single trace of life could be seen in the water. Although it was clear, it revealed an indescribable coldness. Yellow springs weak water. Ningchen's expression turned serious as he looked at the end of the river. How could there be a weak water river in this place? After pondering for a long time, Ningchen strode forward along the weak water river. 10 miles away, the river gradually dried up. Tens of thousands of years had passed, and the former direction of the river could no longer be seen. At the end of the weak water river, Ningchen stopped and looked into the distance. A serious expression flashed across his face. The ghost girl had said that the weak water river was something unique to the underworld. It couldn't appear in the mortal world. Why would it appear here? Could it be that this was once the territory of the underworld? Or was there another reason? Unable to find an answer, Ningchen could only temporarily suppress his thoughts. He turned back to look at the weak water river behind him. With a flip of his right hand, the phantom of a phoenix appeared behind him. With a phoenix cry, a broken green cauldron flew out. The weak water churned and poured in from all directions. In a short while, the water in the weak water river gradually dried up and was absorbed into the green cauldron. The green cauldron returned, and the phantom of the phoenix disappeared. Ningchen wanted to continue forward, but after taking 2 steps, he turned back to look at the dried-up weak water river behind him. Heh! Unable to find an answer to the question in his heart, Ningchen shouted. His vigorous true essence circulated, and a snowstorm filled the sky. With a slash of his sword, the ground within 10 miles split open. The ground split open, and the power of laws suddenly increased by 100-fold. The mountains shook and the earth cracked, and a dim light spread out from the ground. With a thump, Ningchen's feet landed on the ground. Below him, the ground shook again, and 100 miles split open. Ningchen fell into the crack faster and faster. His eyes sank, and Genesis and astral souls appeared in his hands at the same time. He stabbed his sword into the broken wall, forcibly stopping his fall. The black broken wall was bottomless. Ningchen looked down, and after a while, he pulled out his sword and quickly fell down again. Sword light streaked across the stone wall, and sparks flew everywhere. 10 miles, 50 miles, 200 miles. Ningchen didn't know how deep he fell. The dim light in the crack grew brighter and brighter, and the temperature also rose. Descending another 50 miles, the heat wave soared into the sky. Ning Chen felt that it was increasingly difficult to breathe. The cold air around him spread rapidly, resisting the heat wave from below. At the same time, outside the crack, the bright moon moved west. The night gradually passed, and the sun rose from the east. Dawn arrived. Below the Ruoshui River, Ning Chen stabbed his sword into the stone wall, and his body continued to fall. In the rising heat wave, the dim light spread out, making people feel an inexplicable fear. In the horizon, the sun rose higher and higher. Below the abyss, the dim light spread out from the ground, dyeing half of the fallen soul abyss dark and gloomy. It was like a ghost hell in the mortal world, and gods and Buddhas retreated. In the Sky Pass City, in the Sky Prison, Luo Xingchen was lying on the ground with nothing to do. She had a withered grass in her mouth and was humming a tune out of boredom. At this moment, the gate of the Sky Prison rumbled open, and the seventh godly general walked in. Seeing Luo Xingchen in a daze, the suppressed anger in his heart surged out again. "Luo Xingchen," the seventh godly general said. "Seventh sister." Seeing who it was, Luo Xingchen jumped up with a joyful expression. "Who is your seventh sister? Where did you hide the divine mark iron? Tell me the truth and avoid unnecessary pain." The seventh godly general said with a cold face. "Did the city lord agree to let me out?" Luo Xingchen asked doubtfully. "So what if I let you out? So what if I don't?" The seventh godly general's expression sank as she said angrily. "Seventh sister, don't be angry. I was just asking." Luo Xingchen smiled apologetically. "Tell me the whereabouts of the divine mark iron, and the city lord might consider reducing your punishment. Otherwise, you can prepare to spend the rest of your life here." The seventh godly general said angrily. "The divine mark iron is in a place that only I can find. Seventh sister, as long as the city lord agrees to let me out, I will bring seventh sister to get it." Luo Xingchen smiled shamelessly. "You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Hearing this, the seventh godly general's expression turned cold. She clenched her delicate hand, and a greenish-brown whip appeared. She poured her true qi into it and lashed out at the person in the prison. Put! A loud whip sound rang out as the long whip lashed out. Luo Xingchen did not have time to react, and the clothes on his arm were torn apart. A bright red mark appeared, and the pain pierced his heart. Luo Xingchen sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. He grimaced and said, "Seventh sister, why did you hit me?" "I'm hitting you, you ungrateful bastard." The seventh godly general's heart turned cold. She withdrew the whip and immediately lashed out again. She avoided the vital parts of the former, but she did not show any mercy. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen hurriedly dodged. However, in the Sky Prison, there were layers of seals that suppressed his body, and his movements were restricted. Before he could dodge, he was hit by the whip again, and the pain pierced his heart. "Seventh sister, please spare me." Seeing that the seventh godly general was really angry, Luo Xingchen ran while begging for mercy. The seventh godly general's face was cold. She lashed out with the whip again and again, lashing out at the person in the prison. For a moment, the Sky Prison was filled with painful cries one after another. It made one's hair stand on end. Outside the Sky Prison, the second and sixth godly generals looked at each other as they saw the situation inside. They could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Women were really not to be trifled with. Mr. Ning had already negotiated with the city lord. As long as the sickly king's stone was found, he would release Luo Xingchen. Seventh sister was obviously here to vent her anger. This kid was really unlucky. However, the city lord also said that it was good to let this kid suffer a little. In thousands of years, this guy was the first person who dared to steal the holy city's sacred object. What's going on inside? At this moment, an old voice sounded behind the two of them. Hearing the voice behind them, the second and sixth godly generals were shocked. They immediately turned around and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, City Lord." The Sky Eclipse City Lord nodded. "Is little Seven inside?" The two godly generals looked at each other and nodded. Reporting to City Lord, Seventh Sister is indeed inside. Do you need us to go in and inform her? No need. Open the door. The Sky Eclipse City Lord said indifferently. The two of them bowed again and replied. As the three of them were talking, the cries of pain in the Sky Prison became more and more tragic. Each cry was louder than the previous. In the Sky Prison, Luo Xingchen was constantly dodging the long whips that were coming at him. The clothes on his body were torn apart and there were bloodstains all over his body. He looked extremely miserable. If you don't stop, I'll fight back. Ouch! After dodging the whip with great difficulty, Luo Xingchen turned around and shouted. The whip hit his shoulder, causing him to grimace in pain. Fight back? You still dare to fight back? Try fighting back. The seventh godly general's whip did not stop as he shouted angrily. Seventh Sister, I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Luo Xingchen ran while begging for mercy. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. The seventh godly general's face darkened. He waved his whip and said angrily, Luo Xingchen, do you know how much trouble you've caused for the holy city and your friends? In order to make up for your mistakes, Mr. Ning has entered the fallen soul abyss for nearly 2 days and has yet to return. What? Luo Xingchen heard this and his expression changed. He reached out and grabbed the whip. His eyes were gloomy as he said, You said Ning Chen entered the fallen soul abyss? Chapter 876. In the fallen soul abyss, under the yellow spring river, a dim light rose and a terrifying heat wave spread out, twisting the space around it. Under the ground, Bai Yi held her sword as her figure continued to fall. 10 miles, 100 miles, there was no sign of her stopping. In the eerie hell, the dim light covered the eyes as the temperature continued to rise. It was getting more and more unbearable. Around Ningchen, snow swirled, resisting the corrosion of the dim light. However, as he fell deeper and deeper, he felt more and more tired. Phoenix body. With a shout, a red light rose and a phoenix appeared. It protected Ningchen's body as she flew down. Half an hour later, in the dark underground world, the phoenix dispersed and Bai Yi appeared. Looking at the shocking scene around her, her heart was in turmoil. All around, black magma surged and the temperature was terrifying. It had never been seen before and it was terrifying. Ningchen strode forward. Wind and snow gathered beneath him, paving a path in front of him and blocking the surging black lava. Be careful, the magma here is not normal. A red light rose and the phoenix body appeared. Looking at the earth fire below, it said. Yeah. Ningchen nodded. He glanced down and said, The fire elemental energy here is shocking. It will be useful to us in the future. Can we take it away? Let me try. The phoenix body replied. It turned its palm and condensed energy. The phoenix shadow behind it spread out its wings and phoenix fire spread out. Endless devouring power circulated and covered the entire underground world. Extreme yang phoenix fire and yin earth fire devoured each other. The two forces collided, causing the ground below to rumble. Waves of fire soared into the sky and formed a black pillar. With the laws of heaven and earth, Ningchen's body was restricted. When the phoenix body's aura was about to run out, Ningchen rushed forward and activated the 4 scrolls. His true yuan poured into the phoenix body. The two of them worked together and the phoenix roared. Phoenix fire filled the sky and forcefully suppressed the yin earth fire. After half an hour, the fire elemental energy in the underground world was gradually devoured. The flames were extinguished and huge black pillars stood up one after another, reaching hundreds of feet. The phoenix body dissipated and returned to its original body. Ningchen looked at the surrounding black rocks and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Maybe he knew what the Sick King Stone was. Ningchen brandished his astral soul, slashing apart the petrified lava with a single slash. His silhouette flickered as he continued diving downwards. 10 miles deep, the pressure increased exponentially, and the hardness of the black rocks became even more shocking. All of a sudden, on the deepest rock wall, a thumb-sized black crystal appeared. It contained a shocking amount of fire yuan power, which could be sensed clearly even from far away. Sikingshire? Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He dashed forward and slammed his palm on the wall. Instantly, cracks spread out and the black crystal flew into his hand. As he probed with his divine sense, he felt a burning pain. Ning Chen retracted his divine sense and a serious expression flashed across his face. It was indeed not an ordinary item. No wonder the Sky Pass City Lord had been looking for this item. A strange stone with such pure fire essence energy was a treasure that could only be found by chance, whether it was used to refine tools or to assist one's cultivation. Perhaps it could only appear in the fallen soul abyss, where the power of laws was peculiar. Thinking up to this point, Ning Chen waved his hand to keep the Sick King stone and plunged down again. An eerie light surrounded his body, and the terrifying gravity was even more unbearable. It was as if 1,000 mountains were pressing down on him, making it difficult to breathe. After another 100 miles, Ning Chen stopped. With the power of laws on his body, his cultivation was severely hindered, making it difficult for him to move forward. You can't go any further. Demonic chi surged and the demonic body appeared. It looked at the surging light and said, "This power comes from underground. If we want to obtain enough Sick King stones, we have to keep going," Ning Chen said solemnly. "Haven't you guessed why Sky Pass City has only obtained a few Sick King stones in the past 1,000 years? The power of laws here is so strong that even true boundary cultivators find it difficult to resist. If we go any further, it will be a truly dangerous place." The demonic body said, "We came here for the Sick King stone, so we can't give up halfway. Otherwise, we won't be able to give the Sky Pass City Lord an explanation for the falling star matter," Ning Chen said. "Is falling stars matter more important, or is your own life more important? I don't want to listen to you anymore. I can only listen to your orders because we have the same goal at this stage. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for forcefully seizing control of this body," the demonic body said coldly. Ning Chen was silent for a moment, then he said, "I will be careful. Just as you said, we have the same goal at this stage. Saving Falling Star is also part of it. In addition, this Sick King stone is a rare treasure in the world. If we can obtain it, it will be of great benefit to us." The demonic body looked at the main body in front of it, and a cold light flashed in its deep eyes. After a long time, it said, "I will trust you one more time. However, once I find that there is danger, I will not cooperate with you anymore." "Don't worry." Ning Chen nodded and said calmly, "At this stage, it won't be that easy to take our lives." The demonic body looked at the former deeply, and without saying anything more, it disappeared and merged into the body. After reaching a temporary agreement, Ning Chen looked down. The wind and clouds on the Star Soul sword changed, and with a slash of the sword, the earth shook and the huge crack continued to spread. In the next moment, Bai Yi flashed and disappeared into the dark light again. Outside the abyss, day after day passed. On the third day, 3 figures appeared on the cliff. The one in the lead was Falling Star, who had just come out of the Sky Prison. "Your friend will be fine." Behind them, the Sky Ascension City Lord calmly said, "Mr. Ning's strength surpasses mine. Even if he can't find enough Sick King stones, it shouldn't be a problem for him to protect himself." On the cliff, Falling Star looked down, and his expression was unprecedentedly serious. He said, "City Lord, I know very well what kind of place the Fallen Soul Abyss is. I have already told the City Lord the whereabouts of the sacred Mark Iron. The City Lord can just send someone to get it. I am deeply sorry for bringing so much trouble to the Holy City. No matter what, I cannot let my friend bear this mistake. I will go find him and bring him back. The seal in your body has just been undone and your cultivation hasn't fully recovered. Once you encounter any danger, you will be in a very passive position. Why don't you wait a few more days? It won't be too late to go down after your cultivation recovers," the 7th Godly General said with a dignified expression. "No need. Thank you for your kindness, 7th Sister. I will be careful." Falling Star nodded and didn't say anything else. He took a step forward and rushed down. The 7th Godly General stepped forward and reached out to stop him, but he was already a step too late. "Let him go." Although Mr. Ning is his best friend in life and death and is willing to make up for his mistakes, he still has to bear the consequences of his own mistakes. No one can bear the consequences for him forever. The Skysore City Lord said. The seventh godly general wanted to say something but hesitated. A moment later, he sighed and respectfully bowed. This subordinate understands. Let's go back. After the Sky Ascension City Lord said this, his figure dissipated and he left the cliff. The seventh godly general looked at the purple-clothed figure that disappeared into the fallen soul abyss with a complicated expression. He sighed again and also left. Within the fallen soul abyss, a purple light flashed as he rushed towards the deepest part of the abyss. With this worry in his heart, Falling Star's speed became faster and faster. He fully released his middle corporeal realm cultivation to resist the power of laws that filled the world. After traveling for more than 2 hours, the power of laws suddenly increased several times over. A dim light spread out, as heavy as a mountain. This is... Falling Star's eyes narrowed. He looked at the dim light in front of him and rushed forward without hesitation. Under the cold moon, in the depths of the fallen soul abyss, the earth was filled with crisscrossing fissures. At the ruins of the Ruoxue River, an astonishing sword mark cut through the earth. Dim light gushed out, shocking everyone. Falling Star arrived. He paused for a moment and then jumped down. In the underground abyss, the power of laws of the world reached its peak and became increasingly terrifying. With every mile he traveled, the pressure around him became heavier. Falling Star's body couldn't keep up and a trace of red overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He waved his left hand and the star mark appeared. A red arrow was placed on the bow and a crescent moon appeared, breaking through the sky. When martial arts reached the peak, it formed its own path. The divine arrow pierced through the air and formed a line between heaven and earth, forming a forbidden domain. Falling Star's figure rapidly descended once more, searching for the whereabouts of his close friend. Just as Falling Star rushed over, a dim light spread out from the depths of the earth. A white-robed figure rushed over, wind and snow swirling around him. Sword light opened up a path, not stopping for a moment. Ning Chen's calm eyes were filled with determination. His sword cut through all obstacles, not wavering in the slightest. Thousands of miles deep, the dim light was almost solid. A terrifying power that exceeded the limits of one's body pressed down from all directions. It was so heavy that it made it hard for one to breathe. Amichem? Suddenly, the dim light below surged, flourishing to the extreme. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed and he stopped. His astral souls revolved and sword chi filled the air, breaking through the air. With a rumbling sound, the power of laws collided. The rumbling sound reverberated throughout the entire underground world. Wherever the aftershock passed, the earth collapsed and rocks cracked. Waves of dust rose up. I've finally arrived. At the end of the underground world, Ning Chen's figure landed. The wind and snow around him blocked the dim light. His footsteps were extremely heavy. After the dust settled, a familiar scene entered his eyes. The Azura Hell was dark and gloomy. Looking at the scene in front of him, Ning Chen could no longer conceal the shock on his face. Was this the underworld? In front of him, there was a dried-up river. There wasn't a single drop of water. On the riverbank, traces of the past could be seen on the bottomless wreckage of a wooden boat. The water was 3,000 meters deep, and the reed flowers sank to the bottom. This incomparably familiar scene caused the hearts of those who returned from hell to tremble. Taking a step forward, Ning Chen's figure sped forward. His heart that had been calm for 100 years could no longer remain calm at this moment. In the world beyond heavens, there was indeed a legend of the underworld. However, he thought that it was just a coincidence. However, the scene in front of him clearly told him that this wasn't a coincidence. The underworld really did exist in the world beyond heavens. Crossing the Yellow Springs River, Ning Chen sped forward. Despite the increasingly terrifying power of laws surrounding him, he didn't stop for even a moment. 100 miles away, a majestic gate stood in front of the stone mansion. Above it there were 4 blurry words. Time was merciless, swallowing everything of the past. When Ning Chen saw the 4 words above the gate, he came to a halt. Netherworld, Underworld. Chapter 877. In front of the gate of hell in the underworld, the first person came after so many years. Ning Chen stopped and looked ahead. His heart was in turmoil. The familiar scene was exactly the same as in his memory. The memories that had been buried for a long time came back at this moment and attacked his mind. During the most painful time in the past, the beautiful figure in red was always by his side. It was hard to understand and unforgettable. He pushed the stone door with his trembling hand. Even if his heart was as hard as steel, he could not keep calm at this moment. A rumbling sound was heard. The history that had been buried for tens of thousands of years reappeared in the world. Behind the gate of hell, a huge space appeared. The familiar altar came into view. However, the demon blade and the divine sword were no longer there. Why? Even though Ning Chen was peerless in wisdom, even though he was the crown in both civil and military affairs, but when faced with these scenes that were difficult to explain, Ning Chen's eyes were unable to clear up any longer. Bewilderment, shock, and various other complicated emotions appeared in his eyes and in his heart. Walking forward step by step, Ning Chen looked at the altar in front of him. On the altar, the traces left by the sword were faintly visible. Apparently, countless years ago, this was indeed the place where the weapons were placed. Ning Chen. Suddenly, a gentle voice came from behind him. It was so familiar that it was unforgettable. Ning Chen's body trembled fiercely as he turned around in disbelief. What entered his eyes was a woman in a bright red wedding dress standing there silently. The red veil on her head had already been removed, and her gorgeous and dazzling appearance caused one to be unable to move their gazes away. Ghost woman. Ning Chen lost control of his mind and his body trembled. He raised his hand but could not help but retract it after a moment. An inexplicable fear rose in his heart. He feared that this was just his dream and would be shattered with a touch. "I'm back," she said softly. In front of him, a gentle smile appeared on the ghost woman's face. It was so bright and beautiful as if she was comforting the panicked young man in front of her. The young man who was not famous in the 9 heavens yet. Hearing this familiar voice again, Ning Chen reached out his trembling right hand. His palm touched his face. He felt a slight chill. It was so clear that it flowed into his heart and warmed his broken heart. Ghost woman. Ning Chen could not help but hug the woman in front of him. His trembling body still could not calm down. He hugged the warmth in his arms tightly and did not want to let go for a moment. "I'm back." As she comforted him softly, the gentleness on the ghostly woman's face became even more apparent. Her overly white and slender hands hugged the man in her embrace. She did not struggle or say anything as she waited for him to calm down. After an unknown period of time, the waves in Ning Chen's heart gradually calmed down. Taking half a step back, he looked at the woman in his arms and said softly, "Are you all right? I heard from Sister Qing Ning that when you were patrolling with the immortal corpse, there was something wrong with your condition. You didn't seem to have regained consciousness." "I'm fine." The ghost girl smiled warmly and said softly, "Can you tell me what happened?" Ning Chen said, "It's a long story. I'll tell you in the future. Why you here? Where are Sister Qing Ning and the others?" Ghost girl asked gently. "Sister Qing Ning and the others have temporarily returned to the inner realm. I came here to find the Sick King Stone in exchange for the falling star," Ning Chen replied honestly. "Sick King, sure?" Hearing this, the ghost girl's eyes flashed with a strange light, making it hard for others to understand. "What's wrong? Do you know where Wangshi is?" Ning Chen was puzzled. "No idea." The ghost girl shook her head and said, "I've only heard of it, but I've never seen it before." Ning Chen had heard of it and nodded. He didn't think much about it. It was indeed difficult to find. He had almost turned the entire fallen soul abyss upside down, but he only found a thumb-sized piece. It was easy to imagine how precious it was. "I've been unconscious for too long. There are many things I don't know. Can you tell me about it?" Ghost girl asked softly. "Okay." Ning Chen nodded. His eyes were filled with gentleness. When you were in trouble, it was during the chaos of the four extreme realms. That master of the four extreme realms. Just as the two were talking about the past, Falling Star was rapidly moving down the abyss. He felt an inexplicable uneasiness, and it was getting stronger and stronger. Knowing destiny, the strong uneasiness lingered. Falling Star released all his cultivation and opened the path with a divine arrow. His figure flashed and rushed down. 10 miles, 100 miles. After an unknown amount of time, black pillars appeared in front of him. They were hundreds of feet tall, majestic, and shocking. The remaining fire essence could be vaguely felt. Falling Star released his divine sense and sensed the remaining aura of phoenix fire in the void. He looked at the huge crack below and continued moving down without stopping. 100 miles, 200 miles, 300 miles. The farther he went from the ground, the stronger the power of laws between heaven and earth. The divine arrow that broke through the void was dazzling. It forcefully split the dim light and opened a path of life and death. After moving down 1,000 miles, Falling Star's body began to crack. Blood flowed out and dyed his clothes red. However, he was still worried about his friend. Falling Star ignored his body that couldn't bear the power of laws between heaven and earth and continued to rush down. After another 100 miles, the dim light suddenly became more intense. The arrow light shattered and couldn't pass the heaven pass. Star Mark, lend me a hand. Feeling that his friend's aura was not far away, Falling Star whispered. Blood overflowed from his hands and dyed the bow red. The next moment, Star Mark filled the bow, and the blood-colored divine arrow shot into the sky. With a rumble, a gap appeared in the steaming dim light. Falling Star's figure flashed through and disappeared into it. In the underground world, the ghastly hell. Falling Star's figure flashed. Looking at the underground world, shock flashed across his face. What is this place? It was a scene that he had never seen before. It was so eerie that it sent chills down his spine. Falling Star didn't have time to think. He took a step forward and continued to follow the aura left by knowing destiny. On the Ruoxue River, the bottomless wooden boat flashed past with a purple light. After another 100 miles, a huge stone gate appeared in front of him. The aura of time was overwhelming. Feeling the aura of his friend inside, Falling Star heaved a sigh of relief. He came to the stone mansion and looked inside. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. Inside the ghost gate, Ning Chun accompanied the ghost lady and softly told her about the past. From quelling the chaos of the four poles, to suppressing the eternal night sect, to the battle of gods, to the upheaval of the central state, to the battle of the ancient battlefield. One after another, earth-shattering events filled in the long 100 years. On the side, the ghost lady listened quietly with a gentle smile on her beautiful face. At the end of the story, Ning Chun looked at the woman beside him and said gently, "This is what happened in the 100 years when you were in a coma. There are some other small things that I will tell you in the future." "Okay." The ghost lady smiled and nodded. Looking at the person beside her gently, she said softly, "So many things happened in the 100 years. I really want to listen to you for a while more. Unfortunately, I won't have the chance." As soon as she finished speaking, the ghost lady's eyes suddenly turned red. A purple gold long sword appeared in her hand. Without any warning, the sword pierced into the heart of the person in front of her. Chapter 878. In the netherworld, behind the gates of hell, a shocking scene appeared. The divine sword in the ghost girl's hand pierced through her chest, causing blood to splatter everywhere. "Arg!" A muffled groan could be heard. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Although it was only a momentary suspicion, the scene of a dream coming true made the knowing destiny state who had been on guard for 100 years no longer calm down. "Why?" Ning Chen lifted his hand and gently touched the face of the girl in front of him. Blood flowed from his mouth as he asked sadly, "Those who trespass into the netherworld shall be killed without mercy." The girl in red's eyes were bloodshot. She pulled out the divine sword in her hand and slammed her palm on Ning Chen's chest. "Arg!" Ning Chen was heavily injured again. His blood was dyed red as he retreated a dozen steps. He spat out a mouthful of blood which stained the ground. Knowing destiny's state. Outside the gates of hell, Luo Xingchen rushed over and supported Ning Chen. He looked at the girl in red with killing intent. Friend. Ning Chen's consciousness gradually blurred. He could no longer see the person in front of him clearly. He fell into his friend's arms and fainted. Luo Xingchen lifted his hand and pressed on Ning Chen's chest a few times to seal his severely injured heart. He tore his clothes and tied his friend behind his back. His trembling hands were dyed red with blood. Kill! The girl in red shouted coldly. Behind her, 4 black illusions appeared with huge black scythes in their hands. They emitted a threatening cold light. Good friend, you've been smart all your life. Can't you see that this is all an illusion? Or are you unwilling to believe the truth and are willing to fall? Luo Xingchen said softly. He picked up the sword that his friend dropped on the ground. His figure flashed as he slashed towards the girl in front of him. The 2 swords clashed and a violent tremor resounded through the gates of hell. Luo Xingchen's hand that was holding the sword was bleeding profusely. However, he was not willing to take half a step back. He released his true energy and forced the person in front of him to retreat. Swish! The black scythes of the 4 soul reapers swept across. The sound of clothes being torn could be heard. Luo Xingchen's shoulders and chest were heavily injured. His bones were exposed and blood was gushing out like a fountain. Are you so fascinated by manipulating other people's emotions? Luo Xingchen ignored his injuries and took a step forward. He grabbed the sword in the girl's hand and forcefully slashed it. With a loud bang, the black sickle blocked the sword edge. The woman in red took advantage of the opportunity to gather her palm energy and hit the former's chest. The fierce palm landed on his body, and the remaining force penetrated his body. Bloody mist gushed out in a glaring manner. You still haven't answered me. Is manipulating other people's emotions so fascinating to you? Not willing to take a single step back, Falling Star allowed the palm strike to land on his body. The astral soul in his hand repelled the black scythe as he slashed down with his sword. As the sword touched her body, black smoke filled the air. The red-clothed woman's figure flickered, showing signs of instability. Did I allow you to die? Answer me. Luo Xingchen's face darkened. The real qi around his body surged and fixed the dispersing phantom. The redness in the red-robed woman's eyes intensified. She gathered the power of heaven and earth in her palm and struck the man's chest again. Palm strike after palm strike, waterfall after waterfall of blood. However, Falling Star didn't seem to notice. He forcefully used his true essence to stabilize the illusory figure in front of him. The coldness in his eyes pierced the heart. The 4 soul gatherers waved their black scythes, taking lives with every move. However, tens of thousands of years had passed, and the power of the array had weakened to the extreme. It was difficult for it to display its former might. The astral soul blocked the black scythe and slashed down again and again. The 4 soul gatherers dispersed one after another, disappearing from the world. Inside the gates of hell, in front of the altar, blood had stained every inch of the ground. The red-clothed woman who was forced to stay in the mortal world became increasingly unstable. The black smoke dissipated, and the power of heaven and earth kept leaving her body. Answer me. Raising his hand to grab the woman's throat, Falling Star's eyes were filled with rage as he shouted. In an instant, the red-clothed woman's figure dissipated. She couldn't stay any longer and returned to the world. The woman's figure dissipated, and the illusion was instantly broken. Not far away, a pearl dimmed and cracks appeared. Soon after, it shattered with a bang. Falling Star stood quietly, looking at the shattered beast core not far away. He clenched his fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Rumble. At this moment, the cave began to shake violently. Boulder after boulder fell from above and smashed into the ground. A faint brilliance spread out from every crack. It was as heavy as a mountain, making it difficult for one to breathe. Falling Star's figure swayed a few times, and the sword in his hand stabbed into the ground. He steadied himself and looked at the brilliance that permeated the surroundings. He didn't stay any longer and rushed out with his severely injured and unconscious close friend. Just as he took a step, Falling Star's figure suddenly stopped. He looked back and saw that in the depths of the cave, there was a terrifying fire elemental aura overflowing from the huge crack. It was blazing and pure. Sick King Stone. Falling Star's expression shook. His figure turned back, and as he moved, he avoided the falling rocks and quickly rushed into the depths of the cave. In front of the huge crack, a heat wave surged, making it difficult for one to take even half a step closer. The cave behind him collapsed without any delay. Falling Star didn't hesitate and rushed into the crack in front of him. The dim light pressed down on his body, and the heat wave burned his eyes. Falling Star, who was already severely injured, had blood constantly evaporating from his body. It was becoming increasingly difficult for him to maintain his cultivation. In front of him, in the crack, a strange black stone that had been buried for an unknown number of years appeared. Black flames shone, burning the surrounding laws of heaven and earth. Falling Star's figure rushed over. He raised his hand to grab the sick King's stone and quickly rushed out. The sword tip shook the huge rock and swept away the obstacles in his way. Falling Star's figure swept past and quickly escaped out of the netherworld cave. In the endless underground abyss, there was no exit. Falling Star summoned the star mark and drew his bow. The arrow light soared into the sky, opening a path of life and death. With the laws of heaven and earth on his body, it was as if his body was being pressed down by thousands of pounds. Falling Star's body was full of cracks. He endured the heavy injuries and didn't dare to stop for even a moment. Sky Moon Sacred City. The Sky Moon City Lord stood quietly in the small pavilion in the west courtyard. He looked into the distance and waited patiently. The cold moon hung high in the sky, and the night was bone-chilling. At this moment, a purple figure rushed over. Before he could say a word, he vomited a mouthful of blood and fell straight down. Seeing this, the Sky Moon City Lord's expression froze. His figure flashed and went forward to support the former. He frowned slightly. Outside the small pavilion, the 4th and 7th Divine Generals' expressions changed slightly. They immediately went forward to check the situation. Not good. The Sky Moon City Lord checked the two situation. His gaze froze. How did they get so injured? Although the Fallen Soul Abyss was dangerous, these two were not ordinary people. It shouldn't be difficult for them to survive. City Lord, the 7th Divine General said with a worried expression. Bring them to the sacred pond immediately. The Sky Moon City Lord said. Yes. The 4th and 7th Divine Generals accepted the order and brought the two to the back of the sacred city. Cold chi rose from the Sky Moon's sacred pond. In a secret area of the sacred city, 3 figures arrived. 2 Divine Generals went forward and placed the 2 heavily injured people in the sacred pond. City Lord Xing Chen's injuries? The 4th Divine General looked at the City Lord and asked worriedly. His life is in danger. The Sky Moon City Lord said with a serious expression. Although his strength is not inferior to yours, his cultivation is only at the middle stage of the corporeal realm. In addition, his body is not at its peak. If he forcefully enters the Fallen Soul Abyss, he will be severely injured. Now, most of his meridians are damaged and he only has half of his life left. But, speaking of this, the Sky Moon City Lord looked at the white-haired figure in the sacred pond. His expression darkened. Compared to Xing Chen, this Mr. Ning's injuries are more worrying. A sword pierced through his body and severely damaged his heart meridians. He didn't even have a chance to resist. I can't believe that there is someone in this world who has such strength and can severely injure him in one move. 4th Realm? The 7th Divine General asked. Doesn't seem like it. The Skysoar City Lord shook his head. If it was the 4th Realm, it would have been impossible for Starfall to save him. Let's stop guessing for now. What we need to do now is to wake these two up as soon as possible. Little 7, heal Starfall's wounds. As soon as he finished speaking, the Sky Moon City Lord stepped forward. He turned his palm and condensed energy, pouring it into the plain-clothed youth's body. The seventh divine general also focused his mind and gathered his true qi to help Xingchen heal. Time passed little by little. In front of the sacred pond, the Sky Moon City Lord frowned more and more. What was going on? This boy's injuries were automatically healing? No longer interfering, the Sky Moon City Lord stopped and waited calmly. Behind them, the fourth divine general, who was guarding the two, was puzzled. He asked, "City Lord, what happened?" "I'm not sure. This boy's body is not right. It is automatically healing his heart meridians," the Sky Moon City Lord said. Hearing this, the fourth divine general was shocked. There was actually such a thing. Without the transcending mortality body, the physical body was shackled and the heart meridians were severely damaged. It was an almost irreversible injury. With the help of the sacred pond, frost gradually appeared around Ningchen's body, floating on the surface of the water. In an instant, tiny ice crystals formed on the surface of the sacred pond. It was unusually beautiful and intoxicating. The fourth divine general looked at this shocking scene and his eyes were filled with disbelief. The sacred pond had never frozen. The current situation meant that the spiritual power of the sacred pond was rapidly fading. "City Lord." The fourth divine general came back to his senses and hurriedly reminded. The Sky Moon City Lord raised his hand and interrupted the fourth divine general. He looked forward and said seriously, "This is a matter of life and death. Let's save him first." The fourth divine general had no choice but to swallow his words and wait anxiously. On the other side, after the seventh divine general stabilized Xingchen's injuries, he withdrew his true qi. Only then did he notice the scene next to him, and his face was filled with shock. Time passed and the night gradually passed. In the east, dawn was approaching. In the sacred pond, half of the water had already frozen and the spiritual qi had mostly dissipated. At this moment, in the sacred pond, the silhouette in plain clothes slowly opened his eyes. After a short moment of confusion, memories came flooding back. Ningchen stood up and saw the three figures standing quietly beside the sacred pond. He did not say a word and bowed respectfully. His heart was deeply hurt and his memories were deeply buried. Ningchen's sorrowful eyes regained their calmness and his broken heart was as firm as a rock again. "Ha!" With a light shout, the sky was filled with frost. Ningchen turned his palm and condensed the life scroll. His true qi flowed continuously into his close friend's body to heal his injuries. The trip in front of the gate of hell was unforgettable. The road ahead was not over yet. He should not be so weak. His indulgence in the beautiful dream made him lose himself and unwilling to wake up. How naive and stupid he was. This time, if Luo Xingchen had not risked his life to save him, he might not have been able to come back. From now on, this kind of thing would never happen again. He was in the knowing destiny state. He did not have the right to be weak. Chapter 879. The sun rose from the east. In front of the sacred pond in Sky Moon's sacred city, a white-clothed figure stood in the air. Wind and snow swept across, and a strong life force continuously poured into Luo Xingchen's body to heal his injuries. Below the sacred pond, the frozen pond water gradually melted. The spiritual energy actually flowed in the opposite direction, restoring life force. Outside the sacred pond, the two Sky Moon Divine Generals saw this scene and their hearts were in turmoil. They couldn't believe it. A prodigy of a generation. The Sky Moon City Lord sighed softly. After seeing this kid's actions, he knew that the Qilin Pavilion's defeat wasn't unjust. This famous ninth disciple of the Mahist sect had already surpassed the third realm and was invincible. In just 100 years, he was able to reach such a level. He was the first person in thousands of years. In the east, the morning sun shone, dispelling the coldness of the night. Above the sacred pond, Ningchen stopped and his body slowly descended to the side of the sacred pond. Junior Ningchen thanks the city lord for saving me. Ningchen respectfully bowed and said, "It's nothing. However, the person who saved you is Luo Xingchen." The Sky Moon City Lord said seriously, "I know." Ningchen nodded and said, "Can you tell us what happened? With your strength, How did you get injured to such an extent? The Sky Moon City Lord asked. I was careless and was injured by the illusion array. It's my carelessness. Ning Chen calmly replied. A trace of undetectable sadness flashed across the depths of his eyes, but it disappeared instantly. Illusion array? The Sky Moon City Lord was puzzled. He had personally entered the Fallen Soul Abyss before and didn't see any illusion array. Ning Chen nodded and briefly explained what happened in the Fallen Soul Abyss. The ruins of the underworld. Hearing the former's words, the Sky Moon City Lord was shocked. The ancient underworld was mysterious and no one knew where the underworld was. He didn't expect the underworld to be in the Fallen Soul Abyss, which was not far from the Sky Moon City. At this moment, a painful groan came from the sacred pond. Around Luo Xingchen, the skin that was burned by the sick King's Stone began to fall off, revealing new skin. Ning Chen turned around and looked at his close friend in the sacred pond. His eyes became more determined and his previous plan became more resolute. All along, they had been passively facing the storm. This time, he could not prepare for it. Otherwise, once the storm came, they would once again fall into danger and struggle. We finally survived that life and death crisis. The Skirich City Lord sighed with emotion. He waved his hand and a blood-red divine sword and a strange black stone appeared. He handed them to the person in front of him and said, Mr. Ning, these are the things that Falling Star brought back. Now, I will return them to their rightful owner. Ning Chen took Xing Hun and the sickly King's Stone. After a moment of silence, he drew his sword and slashed at the King's Stone. In the intense collision, the divine edge broke the wondrous stone, sparks flew in all directions, the sick King's wondrous stone was split into two. Ning Chen took half of the sick King's Stone and handed it to the Sky Pass City Lord. He said seriously, City Lord, this is the reward I promised. The Sky Pass City Lord looked at the King's Stone in the former's hand and didn't reach out to take it. He said seriously, I only need 30% of the size. This is much more than what you and I have discussed. City Lord, this Junior and Luo Xingchen are indebted to you for saving our lives. The extra King's Stone is just a token of our appreciation. I hope that City Lord won't reject it. Ning Chen said softly. The Sky Pass City Lord was silent. After a moment, he reached out to take the King's Stone and didn't reject it hypocritically. On the side, the 4th and 7th godly generals glanced at each other. The longer they interacted with Mr. Ning, the more different their impression of him was from the legends. He was approachable, knew how to repay kindness, and was willing to risk his life for his friends. If this kind of person was an unforgivable and heinous executioner like the legends described, then who could be called a good person in this world? The Sky Pass City Lord waved his hand. In a stream of light, a 7-colored divine iron appeared and slowly flew to the people in front of him. This is the sacred Mark Iron. It has the ability to refine all the treasures in the world. Luo Xingchen has always wanted to use it to reforge his star mark bow. Now, according to our agreement, I will temporarily lend it to you. The Sky Pass City Lord said seriously. Thank you, City Lord. Ning Chen took the sacred Mark Iron and bowed respectfully again. Mr. Ning's injuries have just healed and you need time to recuperate. Why don't you rest in the guest room? The Sky Pass City Lord asked. No need, I am fine now. Ning Chen gently shook his head and said, Xing Chen hasn't woken up yet. I'm worried. Let's just wait here. The Sky Pass City Lord didn't try to persuade him. He nodded and looked at the 2 godly generals beside him and said, You two take turns to wait here. If Mr. Ning needs anything, report back immediately. The 2 godly generals respectfully accepted the order. The Sky Pass City Lord took one last look at the figure in the sacred pond. He didn't say anything else and left first. The 4th godly general followed and left together. Sorry to trouble you. Ning Chen nodded to the 7th godly general who was quietly waiting at the side and said, Mr. Ning, you are welcome. The 7th godly general also bowed back and said. Ning Chen looked at the sacred pond. After a while, he waved his right hand. Immediately, a light flashed on Luo Xingchen's body. The star mark bow rose and turned into a stream of light that flew over. Ha! With a light shout, the phoenix appeared. Flames rose in the air as the divine flame of Li burned the sky. Inside the phoenix fire, Ningchen raised both of his hands. All of a sudden, the divine mark iron and the star mark bow flew up. 7-colored light fell from the divine iron, covering the star mark. With the help of the phoenix fire, the sacred object was refined. On the star mark bow, layers of outer skin were slowly peeled off. Ha! With another shout, Ning Chen's right hand circulated the extreme cold qi. The Sick King stone flew out. Black flames rose, and in the snow, its shape gradually changed. Yin and Yang restrained each other. Ning Chen's hands circulated the extreme Yang phoenix fire and the extreme cold qi, turning them into 2 treasures. Not too far away, the 7th divine general watched all of this with a brilliant light in his eyes. Without a doubt, this Mr. Ning was helping Starfall temper his divine bow. As for what the Sick King stone was for, that was still unknown. In the sky, the sun rose from the east. Half a day passed. Below, the phoenix fire and the snow split the sky. The completely different yin and yang scenery shocked the people of the holy city. A miracle, a miracle! The people of the holy city looked at the shocking scene in the distance and knelt down. Thousands of miles away, the top warriors also felt this scene. They all woke up from their seclusion and looked in the direction of Heavenly Yu Holy City. When did such a powerful warrior come to Heavenly Yu Holy City? In front of the Heavenly Yu Holy Pond, Ning Chen's hands were refining the yin and yang. The star mark bow and the Sick King stone floated up and down, their shapes changing. Time flew. The sun continued to move west. 1 day passed. Day and night passed. The cold moon rose from the east and shone on the earth. Boom! In the 9 heavens, thunder and lightning suddenly flashed. It was a sign that the divine weapon was about to appear. The heaven and earth sensed it. The clouds of calamity gathered and rolled. The 7-colored star mark bow spread out. The water in the Heavenly Yu Holy Pond started to roll. The waves soared into the sky. Boom! An earth-shattering sound of thunder rang out. 10,000 zhang-long thunderbolts fell from the sky, striking at the godly bow that was about to appear. Piss off! Ningchen raised his hand. His eyes were cold. He did not move. His sword intense soared into the sky. The invisible sword slashed the thunderbolts and resisted the heavenly might. At the same time as the heavenly might descended, the Sick King stone's form changed. 3 black godly arrows appeared. Black flames surged. The appearance of the Sick King divine arrows made Xian Tsung angry. The clouds of calamity pressed down, covering the entire holy city. It's too early to be angry. With a sneer, the Death Immortal Sword appeared in front of Ning Chen. The remaining Sick King stone flew over. The Immortal Sword continued to shine. Suddenly, the Immortal Sword shone brightly. Boundless sword light soared into the sky. Chapter 880. Heavenly Yu Sacred City. In front of the sacred pond, a divine weapon appeared. The Immortal Sword was renewed. Knowing destiny continued to defy the heavens. The sacred mark iron sprinkled down, mending the last crack. From today onwards, I bestow upon you the name, Sickly King. The Sickly King appeared. The sword light soared into the sky. The darkness was boundless. The flames were burning the world. The heaven and earth sensed it. The tribulation clouds rumbled. Layers of blood-red light appeared. The black tribulation clouds turned blood red. Its power suddenly increased by several folds. Leaping into the sky, Ning Chen waved the Sickly King's sword. His body was surrounded by black flames. Amidst the coldness, there was a blazing aura. The sword slashed the sky. Instantly, a 10,000 zhang long black sword mark appeared in the sky. It sliced through the lightning and the night sky. The world was shocked by the sword strike. The citizens of the sacred city below looked at the silhouette in plain clothes. Their faces were filled with shock. Rumble! The blood-red tribulation clouds rumbled again. Thunder and lightning lit up the night sky. An unusually oppressive aura spread between heaven and earth. It made it hard for people to breathe. Under the tribulation clouds, the silhouette in plain clothes stood in the sky. The sickly king's sword in his hand was burning with black flames. The extreme yin and extreme yang divine sword shocked the universe. It surpassed the limit and angered the 9 heavens. Rumble. 10,000 layers of blood lightning descended. It was earth-shattering. It tore open the night sky and descended upon the world. Phoenix body. With a soft voice, the sky was filled with phoenix flames. Ningchen stopped in his tracks. The wind and clouds on the sickly king's sword changed. The 3 suns appeared. The phoenix flames fused together. Sickly king's 3-sun sword. The new martial art appeared. The black divine sun sword into the sky. It was an unparalleled martial art. It shocked the world. The 3 suns rushed into the heavenly tribulation. The 10,000 layers of lightning collapsed. The black flames spread rapidly, burning the tribulation clouds. In just a few breaths, the tribulation clouds were burned by the black flames. The moonlight shone through the black flames and returned to the world. Ningchen waved his sword. The black flames returned to the divine sword. His figure slowly landed on the ground. Dust flew without wind. The water in the sacred pond rippled. The moon was reflected in the sky, witnessing the shocking battle. Beside the sacred pond, the 7th divine general recovered from his shock. The way he looked at the white-haired man changed. Who in the world could be a match for such a genius? Could it be that birds of a feather flock together? Back then, he thought that Luo Xingxin's combat strength was already terrifying. Now that he had seen his best friend's performance, he realized that there was always someone better than him. In the small pavilion of the western courtyard, the Lord of Tianyue City was watching the whole process of knowing destiny's tribulation. His eyes flashed. This man would become the one who would dominate the world in the future. City Lord. Outside the pavilion, the 4th immortal general suppressed the shock in his heart and reminded. The Sky Moon City Lord raised his hand and said calmly, "I know what you mean. There is no need for that. Sky Moon City has always stood aloof from worldly affairs. There is no need for us to deliberately rope in others. Moreover, this person will not join us just because we want to rope him in. The friendship between gentlemen is as plain as water." The 4th immortal general opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. He just sighed and swallowed the rest of his words. The night gradually passed and dawn arrived once more. Within the sacred pond, the unconscious figure still hadn't woken up. However, his aura was gradually recovering and his injuries were stabilizing. Beside the sacred pond, a plain-clothed figure stood silently. His white hair draped behind his back. His gaze was fixed on his friend, waiting for him to wake up. Behind him, the 4th immortal general appeared and came to replace the 7th immortal general. "7th sister, go rest for a while," said the 4th immortal general softly. "Okay." The 7th immortal general nodded and looked at the sacred pond. He sighed and turned to leave. Right at this moment, a brilliant light suddenly rose from the holy pond. Purple light dazzled the eyes as it surged out. "This is..." The 7th immortal general's body shook. He looked back in shock. A breakthrough? Beside the sacred pond, Ningchen looked at the phenomenon within the pond and revealed a faint smile. "Friend, your talent is truly enviable." Within the sacred pond, the unconscious figure slowly opened his eyes. His aura rapidly rose and reached the peak of the corporeal realm in the blink of an eye. "Friend, your bow and arrows." Ningchen waved his hand and the star soul bow and the sickly king arrow flew out. Within the purple light, Luo Xingxin's figure stood up and grabbed the bow and arrow. Instantly, he and the bow became one and a sharp light pierced through the 9 heavens. "It's great that I'm still alive to see your annoying smile." After a moment, Luo Xingxin withdrew his aura and walked towards the sacred pond. He looked at his friend and smiled. "Same to you." Ningchen smiled and replied. Luo Xingxin looked at the 2 people in front of him and bowed respectfully. "7th sister, 4th brother, thank you." The 4th immortal general didn't say anything and patted the former's shoulder. On the side, the 7th immortal general's eyes flashed with tears, But he quickly regained his composure and said coldly, "Since you've woken up, go apologize to the city lord. Don't think that you can get away with stealing the sacred item just because you're injured." Hearing this, Luo Xingchen smiled and said, I remember. I'll go now." Ningchen looked at this scene with a smile and felt gratified. He could see that these people in the holy city really treated their friends as family. He would let them settle the rest. "Ji Ming, I'll go settle the matter here and then I'll go with you," Luo Xingchen said. "Okay." Ningchen nodded and said, "Go." Luo Xingchen retracted his gaze and walked forward. The two divine generals nodded and saluted before following him. Looking at the three leaving figures, Ning Chen's body flashed with silver light and left the sacred pond in an instant. In the small pavilion in the west courtyard, the three people walked over. Luo Xingchen stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "City Lord." The Sky Mountain City Lord turned around and looked at Luo Xingchen in front of the three people. He nodded lightly and said, "It's good that you've recovered. From now on, don't do such a disgraceful thing again. You've disgraced the holy city. I'll settle the score with you personally." Luo Xingchen lowered his head and replied respectfully, "If you have time, come back to the holy city. No matter when, the holy city's gate will always be open for you." The Sky Mountain City Lord said calmly. Luo Xingchen replied again, "Okay, you can go." The Sky Mountain City Lord waved his hand and said. Luo Xingchen bowed again and silently got up and left. He used to be eloquent, but now he was speechless. In front of an elder who truly cared about him, Luo Xingchen could only remember every word he said and did not speak much. "You can leave as well." The Sky Mountain City Lord looked at the two immortal generals outside the pavilion and said. The fourth and seventh immortal generals respectfully accepted the order and immediately left. "Mr. Ning, show yourself." After the three people left, the Sky Mountain City Lord said softly. "The City Lord's senses are indeed sharp. This junior admires you." As he spoke, outside the pavilion, the wind and snow lingered. A silhouette in plain clothes appeared and spoke. "You didn't come with Luo Xingchen, so I know you have something to say. Mr. Ning, please." The Sky Mountain City Lord said calmly. Ning Chen stepped into the pavilion. With a flip of his hand, the sacred mark iron appeared and flew to the Sky Mountain City Lord. The Sky Mountain City Lord took the sacred mark iron and put it away with a wave of his hand. He said with a sigh, "I heard that Mr. Ning has a phoenix essence. Now that I've seen it, I know that Mr. Ning doesn't just have a phoenix essence." Having a phoenix essence and obtaining the phoenix's inheritance were two completely different things. The phoenix was noble by nature and hated humans. It was almost impossible to obtain its inheritance. At least, before this Mr. Ning, he had never heard of a second person who could do it. "When I was young, I was lucky enough to obtain the phoenix's favor. However, this junior's aptitude is too low. These years, the power of the phoenix has been covered in dust, and it's hard for it to display its brilliance." Ning Chen sighed. Innate talent is indeed important, but tempering oneself is also indispensable. Mr. Ning has already surpassed all other proud sons of heaven. I believe that before long, the glory of the phoenix will reappear in this world. The Skirich City Lord said in a soft voice. "Thank you for your praise, City Lord." Ning Chen responded and continued, "City Lord, after this matter, this junior's whereabouts should have been known by others. I cannot stay any longer, otherwise I will bring a lot of trouble to the holy city. Later, this junior will leave with Luo Xingchen and will not appear in this world for a short time. If the City Lord has any matters to look for me, you can send someone to the Spirit Void Star region to look for Princess Qi Lin Yuzhen." The Sky Mountain City Lord heard this and a light flashed in his eyes. A moment later, he nodded. The rumors were true. Princess Qi had an unusual relationship with this Mr. Ning. "City Lord, it's getting late. This junior should also leave. See you later." Ning Chen cupped his fists and bowed. "See you later," the Sky Mountain City Lord replied. As soon as he finished speaking, the snowstorm in the small pavilion started again. The white-clothed figures slowly faded away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Outside the City Lord's mansion, Luo Xingqian stood quietly. When he saw the white-clothed figure appear in front of him, he smiled and said, "You're really slow." I told him a few things. Ningchen responded and immediately walked forward, saying, "Let's go." Luo Xingqian nodded and left together. Just as the matter of the Sky Mountain City was concluded, far away in the endless starry sky, in the majestic hall of the Demon Palace, the saint of the Demon Palace, dressed in a light blue brocade robe, raised his hand and pointed to the heavens, waiting for the right time to arrive. The saint of the Demon Palace, the saint who pushed the Demon Palace to return, had caused the 4 great inheritances to suffer heavy losses without moving a single soldier. His unparalleled wisdom had reappeared in the world. After 1,000 years of planning, the time had come. The name of the Demon Palace reappeared in the world. The time had finally come. Jie Tiance waved his hand and dispersed the runes in the void. He looked forward and said, "Tsk." Light flashed and 4 figures appeared in the hall. The 4 protectors of the Demon Palace had all appeared in the world. "Begin," Jie Tiance said indifferently. "Yes." The 4 protectors of the Demon Palace half knelt and accepted the order. Soon after, their figures faded away and disappeared from the hall. With the saint's order, tens of thousands of troops gathered above the demon domain. 100,000 punitive troops appeared out of thin air. Demonic chi filled the sky and reversed the sun and moon. The appearance of the demon army shocked the world. Everyone looked at the Demon Palace's territory in the distance with fear. In front of the demon army, the 4 protectors stood in the air. Their terrifying cultivation made them invincible. From today onwards, the Demon Palace will once again reign over the world. Everyone, let's go. With a single order, 100,000 troops set off. The sound of clanging resounded throughout the universe. In the rear of the Demon Palace, a pair of calm eyes quietly watched the army set off. There were no ripples. A blue brocade robe was holy and dazzling, untainted by a speck of dust. Chapter 881. In the Devil Palace, the Devil Army was mobilized, and the flames of war rose. 100,000 soldiers were sent out in all directions, and the 4 protectors of the Devil Palace moved out together. For the sake of the Devil Palace's great plan of 10,000 years, they were going to expand their territory. 10 days later, within 100,000 miles of the Demon Palace, the Demon Army had crushed all resistance. Everywhere the army went, scorched earth was everywhere. This was the true demonic calamity. The killing intent of the demonic armies surged to the sky, as if they were trying to avenge the humiliation they had suffered in the past. The heavens were shocked. All great sects fell into panic. Everyone felt danger. In the holy palace of the Devil Palace, Jie Tiance, who was wearing a blue brocade robe, looked at the sky in front of him quietly. His expression was calm, and he didn't say a word. On the other side of the all-heaven starfield, in the Mount Meru Buddhist kingdom, the 3 Buddhist masters sensed something. They opened their eyes and looked into the distance. "Saint Priest of the Devil Palace, do you really want to bring another catastrophe to this world?" The human Buddha Lord couldn't help but ask. "Why not?" Jie Tiance said faintly in the sacred hall of the Devil Palace. "Haven't you learned your lesson from the great calamity 30,000 years ago? The actions of the Devil Palace will only result in a lose-lose situation in the end. All living beings are innocent. Please reconsider." The Earth Buddha Lord said solemnly. "All living beings?" Jie Tiance smiled indifferently and said, "Does the Buddhist kingdom still have the right to talk about all living beings?" 3 Buddha Lords, I don't need to tell you where the source of the Buddhist kingdom's power comes from. When it comes to deceiving and enslaving all living beings, the Buddhist kingdom is the best in the world. Amitabha. Heavenly Buddha Lord chanted the name of Buddha and said calmly, "The Buddha nation does not dare to accept the words of the Saint Arbiter. All living beings give the power of faith to the Buddha nation, and the Buddha nation protects all living beings under the heavens. How is this deceit and slavery?" "Really?" Jie Tiance said calmly, "Since the Buddhist kingdom claims to protect all living beings in the world, then prove it to me." 3 days later, in Windless City, My devil palace awaits the arrival of all Buddhas from the Buddhist kingdom. As soon as he finished speaking, the sky canopy in the demonic palace disappeared. At the same time, in the Shumi Buddhist kingdom, the three Buddha lords' expressions turned solemn as they pondered in silence. Is this a trap or a show of strength? Earth Buddha Lord was the first to speak. The devil palace has just emerged. What it needs the most is to establish its dominance and not to scheme against others, analyzed the human Buddhist Lord calmly. The devil palace's saint secretary has always been sinister and cunning. Common sense doesn't apply to them, the Earth Buddha Lord said worriedly. Windless City is still quite a distance away from Buddha Mountain. Even if the demon palace's saint priest was planning something, he wouldn't have chosen this place. Let's discuss how we're going to reinforce them. The demon palace took the initiative to provoke us. The Buddha nation can't do nothing, the human Buddha Lord said calmly. Amitabha, the demonic calamity is here. From today onwards, the entire Buddha nation will officially enter a state of preparation for war. As for the matter of Windless City, human Buddha Lord, you should personally make a trip there, Heavenly Buddha Lord said. As you command. The human Buddha Lord nodded and acknowledged the order. In the demon area, Jiatians walked step by step to the front of the divine palace that towered into the clouds. He looked at the demon area in front of him and said calmly, "Go and help the moon weaver." In the darkness, the blue-clothed woman with blood-red hair silently accepted the order and disappeared in an instant. Windless City, an ancient city in the west of the Buddha nation. There was no wind and little rain in all 4 seasons. The people in the city lived a hard life and were extremely poor. In the east, the sun rose from the east. The night's cold gradually subsided. Just as the people in the city were preparing for a day of work, dark clouds gathered in the direction where the sun shone, covering the east ascension sun once again. Countless people saw this and were puzzled. They didn't know what had happened. Rumble. In the next moment, thunder rumbled in the dark clouds. Streaks of green lightning streaked across the sky. Under the dark clouds, thousands of figures slowly descended. The leader held a red umbrella and had picturesque features. She was like a fairy from the 9 heavens that had descended to the mortal world. She was holy and unparalleled. Kill! The fairy had descended to the mortal world, but her words were filled with murderous intent. The moon weaver ordered coldly to kill for the sake of the demon palace. Behind her, 3,000 demon soldiers received the order. Their figures flashed and rushed towards Windless City. Buddha is merciful. At this moment, holy light descended from the sky above Windless City. Countless rays of holy light crisscrossed, forming a solemn and holy Buddha statue. Instantly, the Buddha's light covered Windless City below. In the Buddha statue, the human Buddha Lord, dressed in white, sat cross-legged. Golden light shone around him. He looked solemn and merciful. When the human Buddha Lord appeared, many white-clothed novice monks appeared in the void. They sat cross-legged in the sky and chanted Buddhist scriptures to support the array. The human Buddha Lord has come to this barren land personally. I really have a new level of respect for you. However, I don't know if you will be able to return alive. Seeing the Buddha in the Buddha statue, the moon weaver said lightly. Light shone in front of her, and an ancient divine weapon appeared. The moon demon divine weapon reversed the moon and water and appeared in the mortal world. Go and deal with those little monks. Hand over the human Buddha Lord to me. The moon weaver ordered. The 3,000 demon soldiers received the order again and rushed forward. Among the demons, the moon weaver walked forward. Her aura kept rising. The moon was unsheathed and divine light shone, shocking the world. Let's go. As soon as she said that, a stream of light flashed past. She moved her sword, and in the blink of an eye, the sword light was about to take a life. Buddha's light illuminates all. The human Buddha Lord formed a seal. Instantly, Buddha's light illuminated the world. The moon overturned, which had always been undefeated, was blocked. Its divine power could not be displayed. Seeing this, the moon weaver frowned. She turned her sword, and the stream of light gathered and broke through the Buddha in front of her. The Buddha will not tolerate treacherous and evil people. Your Excellency, please surrender. With a soft voice, golden Buddha chains spread around the human Buddha Lord. The supreme power shook off the divine sword light. Immediately, the Buddha chains surrounded the former, trying to seal off the demon path. The human Buddha Lord of Buddha Mountain indeed lives up to your name, the moon weaver said coldly. The red umbrella in her hand disappeared, and the seal on her body was released. In an instant, demonic aura surged, and thunder roared. In the dark silver demonic aura, a moon-shaped demonic seal appeared between the moon weaver's eyebrows. She gathered all her power, and her peak power appeared again. The sword broke the Buddha chains, and the golden light dissipated. The moon weaver's figure moved forward again. The moon shone, and her divine power was threatening. With a clang, the sword and palm collided. The unbreakable golden body took the divine sword head-on. The Buddha's unique Vajra body could not be touched by sharp weapons. Back off! The human Buddha Lord shouted. The divine light around him shone brightly. With a bang, the demonic woman in front of him was pushed back. The moon weaver slid back and stopped 100 feet away. She looked at the human Buddha Lord with a strange expression. For thousands of years, the three Buddha Lords of the Buddha Kingdom had been sitting quietly on Buddha Mountain. Very few people had seen them fight. Today, they were not ordinary people. Extreme Tao, Moon Goddess command. Unwilling to fight for a long time, the moon weaver stepped forward. Her figure was like an illusion. After a few flashes, she soared into the sky. The divine sword danced. In the brilliant light, huge starlight appeared. It gathered the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the essence of the moon. The command of the gods was received by all. The human Buddha Lord frowned. He twirled his hair and fingers again. The golden Buddha around him shone brightly. In an instant, it turned into a golden divine sword and slashed down. The two extremes collided. In an instant, the Buddha and demonic aura shook and devoured each other. Ah! At this moment, there was a sudden groan. Behind the human Buddha Lord, a beautiful figure dressed in blue and with blood-red hair appeared. The black blade in her hand was surrounded by demonic aura. It pierced through the back of the Buddha Lord. Chapter 882. In the sky above Windless City, the blue-clothed, blood-haired lady appeared. Her blade pierced through the Buddha's body, bringing out a stream of blinding red. The human Buddha Lord grunted. Holy light erupted from his body, forcing the lady behind him to retreat. Human Buddha Lord, you're done for. Seizing the opportunity, Moon Weaver's figure flashed again. The inverted water moon in her hand shone brightly, slicing through the Buddha's light and arriving before the Buddha. The human Buddha Lord raised his hand to block the sword. With a loud clang, the golden light shook the blade. He felt his body sink and fell from the sky. Behind him, the blue-clothed, blood-haired lady's figure appeared instantly. Her pitch-black blade slashed across, bringing out another stream of blinding blood. Buddha is merciful, illuminating the world. Although his heart meridian was injured, the human Buddha Lord still refused to back down. He formed a Buddha seal with both hands. Instantly, the Buddhist swastika took shape and turned into a palace wall that crashed towards the two. Moon Weaver focused her gaze. She turned the water moon into a dark silver demonic aura and blocked the Buddha's attack with her sword. With a loud tremor, she retreated a few steps. On the other side, the blood-haired lady was also affected by the Buddhist mantra. Her figure flew out and stopped 3 feet away. Spots of red stained the corners of their mouths. Even though the powerful human Buddha Lord of the Buddha nation was severely injured, his Buddhist aura was still shocking. Ancient Veil Buddhist Lotus. In order to help the evil demon, the human Buddha Lord activated his supreme Buddhist cultivation. Shadows of lotuses appeared around him as he was infused with holy power. The golden revered Buddha statue also raised its hand and chanted sutras. Extreme Tao, chaotic upheaval. Seeing the Buddha's extreme move, Moon Weaver activated her demonic aura and waved her divine sword. Rays of light swirled out, overturning the heavens and earth and creating chaos. As the divine and demonic aura clashed, the heavens and earth sank. The Buddhist lotus had unparalleled power and shone brilliantly, instantly injuring the moon demon's body. At the same time, the remaining power of the inverted water moon divine sword broke through the protection of the Buddhist lotus and created another Buddha. As the Buddha's power ran out, long sleeves fluttered behind him, blocking his vision. In the embroidery, a black blade danced mercilessly. "You've lost your heart. How sad." The human Buddha Lord sighed mercifully and raised his hand to block the blade. Buddha's energy gathered on his fingertips as he forcefully counterattacked. With a loud rumble, the blue-clothed woman retreated several steps. Her long sleeves danced with the saber, and the saber radiance weaved in and out. Chila, the monastic robe was torn apart, and blood spilled out. Facing two of the most powerful people in the world, even the unbreakable diamond body would find it difficult to block the peerless blade. Reincarnation in vain. The Buddha body was injured, but it was difficult to stop the Buddha's heart of world cleansing. The human Buddha Lord raised his vital energy again, and holy light rose from his body. With a flip of his palm, a huge vision of reincarnation appeared and took shape majestically. Extreme Tao, heavenly rainbow. The moon weaver's eyes narrowed as she stepped into the air. Her divine sword streaked across the sky, and dark silver demonic waves converged. The sword tore through the heavens and the seas as it slashed towards the samsara phenomenon. Reincarnation was difficult to stop, and the rainbow shattered. The moon weaver let out a muffled groan as blood sprayed out. On the other side, the human Buddha Lord was similarly shaken by the aftershocks. Cracks appeared on his Buddha body, and his entire body was dyed red. Although the human Buddhist Lord's Dharma was boundless, he was still in a perilous situation when faced with the pincer attack of the two devils. His Buddha blood flowed, and his energy dissipated. Around the human Buddha Lord, the golden light of the revered Buddha statue dimmed. It symbolized that his future as a Buddha was about to be cut off. At the same time, in the sky above Windless City, the 3,000 devil army faced off against the Buddhist cultivators. Their cold killing instincts caused the evenly matched situation to change. One after another, white-robed novice monks fell from the sky, their blood staining their Buddhist robes. Amitabha! The human Buddha Lord couldn't bear to see this happen. He softly chanted the name of Buddha, and the Buddha seal in his hand shot into the sky. The Buddha nation's secret technique was suddenly revealed. 8 truths of salvation, heavenly mantra of the 12 Buddhas. The swastika appeared and spiraled into the sky. The power of the Buddhist sect's most shocking technique was revealed for the first time. Instantly, Sanskrit chants resounded between heaven and earth. Many Buddha figures appeared, forming 4 majestic holy walls. The power of the absolute saint dispelled the power of evil and cleansed the sins of the world. Not good. Seeing the Buddha's power, the moon weaver's expression turned serious. She turned her palm and condensed her essence energy. She pointed her finger at the sword, and demonic waves surged. Extreme Tao, Moon Devil. When the Extreme Tao appeared, the Moon Devil's apparition appeared. Its shocking demonic power shook heaven and earth. Everything in the world prostrated, and the universe was shocked. On the other side, the blue-robed lady's saber spun. With a soft shout, she circulated her martial arts to the extreme. Behind her, huge black butterfly wings appeared. When the two experts joined forces again, heaven and earth sensed it. Lightning flashed, as if they were angry at the arrival of the demonic calamity. In the next moment, the extreme Tao collided. Heaven and earth instantly dimmed. Waves and undercurrents surged, and the rumbling reverberated in the sky above Windless City. Heaven and earth surged, and dust billowed. The aftershock struck, and 3 groans sounded. Amidst the waves, the 3 figures retreated at the same time. The corners of their mouths were stained red, and they were severely injured. With injuries on top of injuries, the golden light of the revered Buddha statue around the human Buddha Lord could no longer hold on. It shattered, and specks of golden light scattered, dissipating between heaven and earth. A respectable expert. However, no one can change the fact that Buddha has fallen here today. The moon weaver lifted her hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked at the Buddha in front of her and said coldly. The Buddha's blood dripped, and his Buddha energy dissipated. The injuries to his heart meridian were getting worse. However, the human Buddha Lord's eyes were still resolute. He looked at the people below with a calm and benevolent gaze. Buddha Lord, let's retreat. When a Buddhist expert saw this, he hurriedly spoke and begged for mercy. We can't retreat, the human Buddha Lord said calmly. He raised his palms again, and Buddha light shone. All of you must remember that protecting the people is the responsibility of the Buddha nation. Never forget it. His true essence was almost depleted, but the responsibility of protecting the people could not be forgotten. The human Buddha Lord circulated his meridians, and Buddha light shone brightly. After a while, it gradually turned red. Using his blood as the origin, he activated his Buddhist techniques. The human Buddha Lord put his palms together again, and a bloody light shone on the world. With a loud bang, the Sarira on his head shattered, and his cultivation of 1,000 years dissipated. Be careful! Seeing the former Buddha Lord going all out, the moon weaver's expression turned solemn. The lady in blue nodded silently. Her sleeves danced, and a saber appeared from her saber. The black and white ninjas flew out, and black butterflies filled the sky. 8 truths of salvation returned to heaven and earth. Heaven and earth overturned, and an earth-shattering Buddha aura lit up the sky. An unprecedented pressure descended, and a crack appeared between the brows of the human Buddha Lord. Buddha blood flowed out, cleansing the world of filth. A shocking move appeared for the first time in the world. In the sky above Windless City, there was a violent storm. Dust and sand flew, and heaven and earth sank. Extreme Tao, chaos of the moon. The final move arrived. The demonic mark between the moon weaver's brows shone brightly. Sword light swayed, and the heavens descended. A scene of chaos appeared in the world. Ferocious beasts galloped, and divine birds whistled in the sky. On the other side, the black butterfly flew into the void. Divine light shone in the world, and the black and white saber radiance soared into the sky. The 3 experts exchanged blows, and the outcome was decided immediately. At this moment, a golden light shone down from the heavens. The Buddha aura was shocking, and it was unparalleled. Earth Buddha Lord. In the sky above Windless City, many white-robed novice monks were delighted. Buddha, I have been waiting for you for a long time. At this moment, a calm voice sounded from the top of the heavens. In the rolling clouds, a young man in white stood quietly. He raised his hand and pointed. Immediately, a violent wind howled, and the golden light dissipated. Second Guardian of the Demon Palace, by Wang Ran. The golden light shone again, and an illusory figure appeared. He sat cross-legged on the lotus and looked at the young man in white in front of him. It's our first time meeting. Nice to meet you. Bai Wangran said lightly. He looked at the battle below and said, Earth Buddha Lord, I think we shouldn't interfere in the battle below. The Earth Buddha Lord's eyes narrowed. He twisted his Buddha seal, and Buddha light rose around him. A huge Buddha palm appeared and slammed down. Bai Wangran smiled indifferently. He didn't move. In the clouds below, a black heavenly net appeared. With a boom, it blocked the Buddha's palm. Demonic spider heavenly net. The Earth Buddha Lord said seriously. Earth Buddha Lord, since you know, don't waste your energy. With me here, Buddha Lord, what do you think is the possibility of passing this test with just one Buddha Lord's Dharma body? Bai Wangran smiled faintly. Just as the Earth Buddha Lord and the second guardian of the Demon Palace were exchanging blows, below, 3 powerful techniques collided. Suddenly, a violent sandstorm swept across the sky. It was so terrifying that words couldn't describe it. The Buddha and the demon clashed, and endless power of the holy demon exploded. Both inside and outside the battle, the heavens and the earth were destroyed. In the sky above Windless City, the array was also shattered. The novice monks all groaned, their mouths red. In the center of the battle, 2 figures flew out. Blood splattered everywhere, and they were severely injured. Ugh! The 2 figures froze. They vomited blood, and the aura around them surged violently. What a Buddha Lord! Moonweaver looked at the waves of dust, and a trace of respect flashed in her eyes. If she had been alone, she wouldn't have been able to kill this Buddha Lord today. But now, everything was over. In the void, the dust gradually dissipated, and the shaking heavens and earth returned to normal. The Buddha Lord, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, closed his eyes. Blood flowed silently from his forehead. The Buddha had passed away, and his soul returned to heaven and earth. Seeing this, the woman in blue remained silent. Her figure faded away, and she left the battle. Buddha Lord! In the sky above Windless City, the white-robed novice monks cried out in pain, their faces filled with sorrow. Amitabha! In the 9 heavens, the Earth Buddha Lord's body trembled. He closed his eyes weakly and chanted, 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of companionship. Humans had feelings and so did Buddhas. On the opposite side, Bai Wangran waved his hand and put away the demonic spider heavenly net. He said lightly, Weaver, let the Earth Buddha Lord take the Buddha Lord's body away. This is the last respect the Demon Palace has for the Buddha Lord. Moonweaver nodded. She waved her hand to stop the demon soldiers who came forward and opened a path. I admire the Buddha Kingdom for sending a Buddha Lord to protect this city. Today, let's stop here. The 100,000 citizens of Windless City will be a gift from the Demon Palace. Bai Wangran said calmly. He looked at the woman below and said softly, Weaver, retreat. Moonweaver heard this, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. She nodded and ordered the troops to retreat. The demon army retreated, and the demonic clouds in the 9 heavens dissipated. Heaven and earth returned to normal. The first rays of the morning sun shone on the earth, dispelling the cold, but not the glaring smell of blood. The Earth Buddha Lord's figure landed in front of the Buddha Lord, who was sitting cross-legged in the void. He couldn't suppress the sadness in his eyes. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the Buddha Lord's forehead, restoring his solemn and benevolent face. Bai Wangran slowly descended from the sky. He looked at the Buddha before him and said calmly, Today's battle is just the beginning. Buddha Lord, I just want to tell you that the Buddha Kingdom's defeat is inevitable. Surrendering is your only choice. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.